would, please keep everybody and all of our troops in your thoughts and prayers, those that lost their lives today as well as their families. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Maxwell, we got the youngins for the pledge.
Would Breeley and Adelie Evans please come forward from These young ladies are here with us tonight to read the Pledge of Allegiance with us. Excuse me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies.
This is Adelie Evans, and she is in 6th grade at Homestead Elementary. Thank you. Breeley Evans, and she is in 3rd grade at Homestead Elementary.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you, ladies. I'd like to take this time to welcome all the visitors. I know we've got standing room only, and for those of you that are out in the hallways, you should be able to hear. So if some of you are standing up and if you'd like to step into the hallways, that's fine as well. But we appreciate everybody being here. Okay, and next item on the agenda is the special recognition, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Maxwell.
Okay, this evening we have 3 aspiring high school students with us. We have representatives beginning with Cumberland County High School, Miss Sophie Turner. Sophie, will you wave at everybody? We have Miss Ellie Meninci from SM at Stone Memorial High School. And we have Mr. Ethan Lane from Phoenix High School. Thank you all for joining us tonight. They will be our representatives throughout the school year.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the charitable fund, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Maxwell on this one as well, and Dr. Wood.
Yes, Dr. Buck Wood will speak to us for just a moment, and then we will award the charitable fund awards that the committee has designated.
Thank you. As we all know, in a perfect world, teachers would never have to go into their pockets to buy supplies for their kids that they're teaching. And this foundation is trying to meet that need, as well as the need of the students that have to pay for their tuition into certain courses, both school courses and extracurricular courses. And through the course of this, we've grown now. We'll be giving out $14,800 tonight. And this endowment is growing, although I would encourage everybody here to get the pamphlet that's out front, look at it, and see if you can't make a $5 or $10 a month donation. It is set up as an endowment, so the money will be there forever, and let's give out some money.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wood.
As I introduce the recipients of tonight's awards, if you'll come when you hear your club or your sporting team called, if you'll come on up, and then if you all will hold your applause until everyone is finished, and those of you that are awarded, please remain up front for a group picture at the end. From Brown Elementary, $300 per group, we have Physical Education Department, Book Club, and Beta Club. And from Crab Orchard Elementary, second grade CKLA reading, sixth grade science class, music class / instrument fund, archery team / PE class, and fourth grade STEM activities, and each one receives $200. And from Homestead Elementary, the Scrabble Club, STEM Club, Book Writers Club, each receiving $340. From Martin Elementary, second grade inclusion class, JV cheer, and student council each receiving, well, $400, and then we had a $200. From Pineview Elementary, Junior Beta Club and JV and Varsity Cheer each receiving $300, as well as Positive Behavior receiving $200. From Pleasant Hill Elementary, girls basketball will receive $450, the yearbook $300, and third grade classroom $50. That's Pleasant Hill. From South Cumberland Elementary, JV girls basketball and Positive Behavior each awarded $500. From Stone Elementary, middle school cheer receives $800. From SMHS, culinary department, $300. Food pantry, $500. Football cheerleading is $250. The wrestling team receives $1,000. Also from, I'm sorry, I had to switch my page, incentive program, $500, FCCLA, $500, National History Day Club, $150, and all of those are awarded to Stone Memorial High School. From Cumberland County High School, we have the bowling team, AP US History, Jet Theatrics, and Drama Club, each receiving $400. French Club receives $200. The wrestling team, football team, and Lady Jet softball each receiving $500. Dual enrollment funds $700, and Positive Behavior $300.
Great job, always. Yeah, taller in the back, taller in the back.
All right, so if everyone will. Okay, Jen's up now. Miss Reagan, get in the front where you can be seen.
Anybody want to join me down here?
I'm not the official photographer. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
One more.
Thank you again, Dr. Wood. Okay, next item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Safety.
Here.
Ms. Paris. Here. Ms. Hale.
Here.
Mr. Brock. Here. Mr. King.
Here.
Ms. Hamby.
Here.
Ms. Boston.
Here.
Ms. Cargy.
Here.
And Chairman's here. Okay, got everybody here. All right, next item on the agenda is the declaration of conflict. Mr. Pat.
Board members, Tennessee Code Annotated Title 49, Chapter 2, Section 202 defines relative as a spouse, parent, parent-in-law, child, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, grandparent, grandchild, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, or any person that resides in the same house as you. Any of you that have such a relative employed by the school system, please raise your right hand and let the record reflect Mr. Inman, Mr. Brock, and Ms. Boston. To each of you hereby certify that the votes that you make tonight will be in the best interest of the Cumberland County school system, regardless of the effect that your vote may have on the employment of your relatives.
I do.
And let the record reflect all affirmative.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the July minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second.
There's one correction.
Okay.
Page 6, item 15A1, line 3, first word, legislator, should be legislature.
Okay.
Amend my motion. Include.
To include the correction?
Correct.
Okay.
What page are you on, Chris?
Page 6, item 15A1, be first word.
Got it.
Mr. Safety, will you amend your?
Yes, but I have an amendment also.
Okay, all right.
On page 9, under old business, I need to make a correction. The statement says, "I hope all of the teachers in Cumberland County take the initiative to support their own vaccinations." 70% of Cumberland County is now vaccinated. That statement was 70% of those 65 and over were vaccinated.
Okay.
Now, whether I said it or not, that needs to be corrected.
Amend my motion to include that correction as well.
And a second correction is, the last line is, I have 2 grandchildren, 4 months old, 3 months old, and the third one in Nashville. It should read, I have 2 grandchildren, 4 months old, 3 years old, and a third one in Nashville that's 2 years old.
Good.
So the 3-month needs to be changed to 3 years.
Again, amend my motion to include all corrections as stated.
All right.
I approve.
Okay. So Ms. Cargy made the motion, Mr. Safety seconded. Any other further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, move on. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to pull out 17B1, 2, and 3 on a separate vote.
B1 and.
Okay.
These are the ones related to overnight and out-of-state field trips.
Okay, you want to just take a separate vote on those
3.
Those 3?
In the consent agenda, yes.
in the consent agenda?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, anybody
Mr.
have?
Chairman,
Yes, Ms.
I do.
Boston.
I have requested that ESER 2.3 and ESER 2.0 and ESER 3.0 be placed on the agenda. I noticed it was placed under the director's report. I'd like mine separately. So if we could move it down to 16 or 17, I'm fine with that.
Let's see. Okay, you're wanting to move 14E.
Just don't don't want to be in the director's report.
Okay, that's fine. We'll move it to, we'll move 14, what did I say? 14E. All right, we'll move it to just before consent agenda. How's that?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right.
And does that include 14F?
No, mine is just, it's just a blanket.
I understand.
All right, so do you want the director to wait until then to talk about?
No, she can go ahead and do her
Okay.
thing, and
So
then mine's
you just
totally-
want a separate vote?
Mine is separate.
Okay, all right. Okay, so then,
Consent agenda. Right here,
so
number
then what we'll
17.
do is we'll let you go ahead and discuss 14E, and then we'll hold off on the vote until right before the consent agenda. How's that, Ms. Boston?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's
I'll
fine.
need a vote on before items.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. All right,
How are we going to do that then?
well, we can,
Because it's all one and the same, is it not?
Well, one can be the discussion, and the other one can be a vote.
But if we're voting before we're discussing,
well,
flop them.
well, no, when we get to 14E, we'll let Dr. Maxwell give us all of her information on this item. And I see what Ms. Boston's wanting. Ms. Boston's wanting a separate vote to stand alone.
I get that, yeah. no, I get it.
And we can,
And if we're going to vote
we'll
on
instead
some of
of,
the attachments.
okay, instead of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but instead of calling it 14E, we'll call it 16C.
My question
Yes.
is if we are going to vote on some of the documents that we received today, then I'm going to need to go first.
We're going to need what first?
I'm going to need to make my presentation first.
All right, then scratch moving it to there.
And I'm not trying to be
Oh,
difficult,
that's
I'm just
fine.
saying it will
That's
affect
fine.
that.
Okay, then we'll put you right before 14E.
That's fine,
How's that?
that's fine.
Any other additions? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. But you and I had emailed back and forth. It doesn't have to be a voting item. I would just like some clarification on quarantines.
We're going to discuss that in the coordinated school health.
That, as long as I
Yes.
get some kind of clarification, I'm
Yes.
fine.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Now, does everybody understand what we're voting on? We're just going to move Ms. Boston to right before 14E, and we're going to take out 17,
B1.
17B, 1, 2, and 3, and vote on those separately. Okay? All right, is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes, so. I thought we did. Did we have a first and a second?
I don't think we did.
No, we didn't, I'm sorry.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I got Miss Boston first and Miss Hamby second. She beat you.
Question.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, Ms. Boston would like to make a presentation. I was just curious, is this going to be a formal video presentation? Is this documentation that you have for us, or are you just going to be speaking?
I'm just going to be speaking.
Thank you.
All right, now, let's do it correctly, okay? Now, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it passed. Somebody keep me straight on it.
I got you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the community comments, and we have several people who wish to speak to us. And now, before we get started, I need to tell everybody that we do not discuss personnel issues, okay? Nobody's got that on the list, okay? So I don't think we'll have a problem with that, but we're not allowed to discuss personnel in an open meeting, okay? And just keep your comments civil, and we'll be just fine, and you will have 3 minutes, okay? And I'm going to call them out as
And there's another time to.
I have been handed the sheets, and according to our board policy, each person speaking shall state his name, address, and subject of presentation whenever you first get up there. And your time will not start until after you have given us that information, okay? And like I said, you'll have 3 minutes. David Stout.
Do I just speak from here? Or?
If you would, come on up here to the microphone. That way everybody will be able to hear.
Well, that's no pressure. We'll not do anything.
Just remember, no shootings.
My name is David Stout. I live at 47 Bluff Creek Terrace in Crossville, Tennessee. And I'd like to talk about HB 623, or HB 580 and Senate Bill 623, and just some general decorum issues that I have with the board. But first, I want to thank everybody on the board for your service, your commitment to your community. That comes from the bottom of my heart. And I'd like to thank everybody in the room for showing the same commitment and hard work for our kids in the community, because in the end, it's all about the kids, or it should be all about the kids. That being said, I would like to address what I perceive to be the lack of professional decorum I've witnessed in past meetings. I've seen far too much interjection of personal opinion and individual opinions and agendas being expressed that have no place in a business meeting. And after all, this is a business meeting in the end. There's such thing as a point of order the chairman and the parliamentarian have at their disposal to rein in such deviations from the business at hand. And I would encourage that be employed more often when people go off on tangents that have nothing to do with the business at hand and are really just personal expressions or rants of what their personal opinions are on things that they may not be qualified to discuss. In regards to Mr. Selfie's speech on HB 580, it was both a misrepresentation of the bill and it was fraught with inaccuracies as well. In fact, it was, to me, total malarkey, and I'll just be blunt about that. If you actually read the bill, it is very clear on what can and cannot be taught. And by statute, our teachers have always had to teach from text and instructional materials that were approved by the Tennessee State Board of Education. They have never been allowed to run off into the weeds and teach whatever they want. These bills protect our parents and students from the very real threat of agendas that have nothing to do with what the parents or the board has approved. An example, well, I'll go on with that. Contrary to what Mr. Selfie might like us to think, our children don't walk out their door in the morning worrying if a KKK member, or a BLM terrorist, or a white supremacist is going to greet them in their front yard. What they want to know is what exciting experience I will have in class today. Will I get to at least have one good meal today, because this may be the only good meal I get today? Will my teacher smile at me? Will she tell me I did good? Will I have to wear that old dirty mask I've had for the last 3 days because my parents haven't been able to provide me a new one? They ran out at school. I got it all snotty and dirty on the playground. Am I going to have to put that back on? And lastly, will I be able to see my friends' faces today? And will I get to play with them and see that we're all having a good time? That's so important to kids, and that's what they're primarily concerned with. I'd also like to address the discussion on vaccinations that Mr. Safdie went into that clearly was designed to shame everybody in the room and anybody out in the community who did not believe that masks were effective, nor that there was science to support that. I printed a list, just a very brief list.
Time.
Of all what the CDC says people shouldn't wear masks for, and I'd advise you all to review that when you get a chance. There are many legitimate
Okay,
reasons.
I'm sorry, but your time
Thank
is up.
you so
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Stout.
I appreciate it.
May I have a chance to respond?
Yes, Mr. Safety.
Thank you for your opinion. I believe opinions are important. Thank you.
May I respond for one moment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you for your words. I would just like to interject that my son and my children are biracial. And actually, my son has walked out the door and worried about the KKK because he actually had a card from the KKK at his Christmas stocking that was at Walgreens. So I think experiences could be very different depending on your life experience. So
This is a perfect
sorry, thank you.
example of personal opinions being
Okay.
infused.
All right,
No
hey,
place in the meeting.
we're done.
Point of order.
We're done. Okay. Next is Willie Watts.
Got this, Daddy? Pressure, Pop.
And once again, Mr. Watts, if you would, please give us your name and address, and your time will start as soon as you get done with that.
My name is Willie Watts. I live at 7363 Highway 127 South. I came here because the biggest thing is your guys' job as a BOE is to have a standard for all the schools, for all of our kids, for all the parents. You guys don't have that. I've heard from countless parents over and over, and kids, quarantine, what's going to happen? I'm not going to be able to be finals exempt. That's out of their control. And where's the standard? Nobody has one. There's no policy on it. I'm personally insulted that I get a letter on home the first day that says you cannot come to your kid's school. Came straight from Homestead, okay? But I'll tell you what, I've yet to see a paper come home that says, hey, there could be a pop-up vaccination clinic in your school. Can you sign this to agree or disagree? Because guess what? In case parents don't know, at 14 years old, your kids can make a medical decision without your authority. 14. I don't know how many board members didn't know that. But I don't think it's fair that our kid's supposed to be making a decision when they don't have the right to make other decisions. A form should be sent home with every student that says, I agree or I don't agree. And I want to say, I hope that you guys don't try to impose mask mandates again. Because one, due to the lawsuit, you guys do know there are exemptions that are there. And don't set like other counties have, like in Bledsoe, where they try to say, oh, you can have an opt-out, but you have to have it by this date. I hope you guys don't do that, because I'll tell you now, this is just a fraction of the force that is the wrath to come when our kids and parents are in danger of what's coming. When we don't feel that the board is taking care of the kids in proper ways, and creating a certain standard across all schools. We shouldn't have months in when we know Delta and this, that, and the other has happened. We should not have to worry about, is it okay at CCHS? Is it not okay at this school and that school? Why isn't there a set procedure? We have an attorney, we have school members, board members. Why is this not something that has already said, hey, you guys were quick last year to set ground on it. Now this year, last year I've been to the meetings. It was like, oh, we're not going to drag our feet. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And guess what? It feels like, again, we're dragging our feet because we're into the school year. Kids are out. They don't know if they're going to be finals exempt, if they're, how that's going to affect them. Because I've heard everything from when they're out,
Time.
it's a standard absence.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
May I respond?
Please keep it short.
Yes, Mr. Watts?
Yes.
I want to thank you for your comments. I think that having a protocol in place that entails vaccinations and other items is very important. And I think your issue of taking finals and absentees for finals has been discussed and and our director has either announced it already or is working on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Safton. Oh, and I would like to, Mr. Watts, I would like to say one thing. To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody giving vaccinations at the schools, and I don't believe that we would ever do that without parent consent. I really don't believe that would be done in Cumberland County.
So I just want to, since you made a statement, I'd just like to inject that, yes, we don't believe, but there's lots of things that have happened that we didn't believe. And the reality is, when you're in the federal government's pocket, they can have a final dictate on that as well.
Thank you. Next up is Deborah Marlowe.
Hello, my name is Deborah Marlowe. I live at 376 Glenwood Circle out in the Homestead community. I've been out there 30-something years. I'm here to talk about mask mandate. I have a 6-year-old grandson that's at Homestead Elementary. I babysit him. I have thyroid issues. I'm susceptible to anything. I take care of my 88-year-old mother who is taking chemo. Before that, she was taking care of my 65-year-old brother that has bone cancer in stage 4. We see each other. We cook for each other. We take care of each other like a family. And I'm begging this board to consider not being selfish and mandate the mask. It worked last year. We didn't have a big fuss about it. And if you read the statistics, I'd like to hand this out if I could. I would like to ask that we protect our children. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old that cannot be vaccinated, and they bring it home. If you'd please consider how many people's life it would touch. I also have a military family that's fighting this war. So everything's going on. I just ask that people don't be selfish. Please don't be selfish, and let's protect each other. That's all we got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marlowe. Next is Patricia Chambers. Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, she's going to divide it up by districts.
My name is Patricia Chambers. I live at 51 Wilshire Heights Drive, Crossville. I'm a resident here. I haven't been here but about 2 years, building a house, having my grandchildren move up here as well. Get to a wonderful state that this is, and wonderful people. I too would like to thank all of y'all on the board. It's a tough time, tough time. What you're handing now is, I've got to reiterate what our first speaker was talking about. I am very sorry that all of you on the board had to hear what Mr. Safdie had to say, because it was totally incorrect. Page 2 on the amendment clearly states that it is not disallowed for anything that he had mentioned in any of his examples. I am a history buff, a lover, a World War II daughter. History is my love. And yes, Jews were persecuted, absolutely. And so were gypsies and lots of others. And this must be taught. Second thing I need to talk about is on your agenda, Mr. Brock. You're going over curriculum development, I believe. And on that, I've got a question. It says that under the leadership and direction of the supervisors and instruction, unified curriculum shall be developed, and it's got stricken within the statewide curriculum framework for the school system in each subject area. It will be presented for the board to adopt. My question is, why are you stepping outside the statewide curriculum? I thought that y'all were supposed to have a curriculum that was developed and maintained by the state. And also, my second thing on your agenda on 15A is family life education. On that, I would like to make a suggestion that might help the parents out there. If you would, on the family life instruction, this is where the children can opt in or out of whatever you're teaching here about family life. I think the parents deserve to have a curriculum that they see before they opt in or out, so that they are informed and can vote properly. So that is my suggestion there, and I hope y'all talk about that. My fourth and final item is, and I'm sorry, Mr. Safdie, we're after you tonight, but God bless you. Everybody's got an opinion, and the thing that bothered me, and I was here, and I was sitting on the front row, and you were very condescending.
Time.
Watch that, please.
Was that Patricia Chambers?
I may respond to
Mr.
that.
Chair, Mr. Brock first, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Safdie.
Just a quick thing about the curriculum development. If you will look at the policy as it was presented last meeting and as we will be voting on a second reading, line 7 says the curriculum shall include those subject and topics required by state and federal laws and regulations. So that, I believe, covers any question about whether we are going to offer anything that's inappropriate or unacceptable, because we are doing what the state has asked us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Mr. Safdie.
Since I was the topic of her presentation, I would just like to say thank you for being here and expressing yourself.
All right, thank you, Mr. Safdie. Next, we have Benedict Rubino. I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced it right.
You got it.
My name is Benedict Rubino. I live at 18 Milnor Terrace, right here in Crossville. This is my first meeting, not after Mr. Safdie. But I would like to make comment on two of the previous speakers. Mr. Watts mentioned the fact that people should have the ability to opt out. I believe that on anything that changes the status quo, people should be required to opt in. People who do not want to be defaulted into a certain group or a certain activity or a certain requirement should have to sign up for it if they want it. And also, Ms. Marlowe, I sympathize with the situation. I am also immunocompromised, but I am fully vaccinated, and based on what I know about vaccinations, I'm fine living my life. As far as mandating masks for people, I would think that the governor's executive order allows people to opt out. Goes back to my opt-in request. Other than that, thank you all. I appreciate your commitment, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you. Next is Linda Clark.
Hello, my name is Linda Clark, and I live at 2266 Highway 68. And my subject to talk to you today is about the school board role and focus. I do want to, as others have done, thank you for your service to the community. This is a tough job, and somebody has to do it. You are getting lots of advice and opinions. Even the editorial page offered today. Mine is offered in a spirit of encouragement for you to focus on the work at hand. A little visual. K, know your limits. Avoid temptations to micromanage or step out of your role. I, identify your challenges and be strategic in confronting them. The local paper reported third graders at 30% proficiency in reading skills. Seventh graders at 25% proficiency in math skills. Addressing learning loss is the must priority. It's the top priority. Please strive for excellence and not for average. Distractions are an enemy to your focus. Avoid them. For example, the school board is not responsible for anyone's personal health choices. Adult employees must be self-reliant, and the parents or legal guardians have the responsibility for their children's health. S, support your frontline workers and encourage parental engagement to tackle the learning loss challenge in every way possible. Be clear, concise, and accurate in every communication. The education world is burdened with bureaucratic mayhem, and those trapped within it desperately need clarity and accuracy. According to the published minutes of the last board meeting, an egregious example of blatant inaccuracy occurred in this boardroom. The truth is, Tennessee passed a law banning certain concepts from classrooms and curriculum while offering 4 topics that should be included. The Department of Education published rules for the LEA application of that law. I read both the law and the rules and had no trouble understanding the stated distinctions. And I think surely you are capable to do the same. Inaccurately depicting the law's provisions in this boardroom contributes to unproductive divisiveness. Instead, do the required work to successfully guide teachers, staff, and parents to respect and follow that law and the others. Man, I just have one thing.
20 seconds more, please.
Okay.
Thank you. And get back to the top priority, which is the kids.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Okay. Next, we have Melissa Courtney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Courtney. My address is Neverfail Road, Sparta, Tennessee. Sorry. There's a lot of video going on, and I'm really worried about putting my address on there. So, first off, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for giving us mask choice this year. Our children are beyond thriving right now. And granted, I know there's a lot of sicknesses going on, but I do want to point out that we do have a lot of sicknesses every single year, for every single year, every time we start school. And I know this year is different. I am going to address that as well. But I just want to tell you, thank you. My kid can breathe. You have a lot more students, I know, in our school. We have over 100 more students this year. And I have been one that says if it changes, we're out. Like, we'll go back to homeschool. But there are things that public school offers that homeschool doesn't. And I know because I homeschooled, okay? So there are reasons, and it's not daycare. There are a lot of reasons we choose to put our children, we trust our children in your care. And it is getting scarier and scarier and scarier every day. We have to have uncomfortable conversations with our children, letting them know nobody ever, ever, ever puts a shot in you. We have to have uncomfortable situations. Hey, have you heard of anything like this? And the answers are alarming. The things that are happening right now are alarming. We are not sticking to education. And that is what I hope you guys really, truly make happen in our schools. Encourage, reward everything. Attendance with all these children that are being quarantined, forced quarantined. These doctors are telling them to quarantine if they don't have symptoms. My doctor didn't, thank goodness. My doctor said you're symptom-free, good to go. So that cough is over, and they could return back to school, thank goodness. That was wonderful, but they did miss school for that whole time. So I'm hoping there's some kind of policy that you can enact, a COVID-related policy for these absences that these kids are now getting because they're worried, as you've heard. I will second the opt-in notion. Let's second that. Anything to do with family life, anything to do with some of the things that Safdie brought up, any curriculum changes. I love the fact that we might be able to get a hands on a curriculum you want us to approve or give permission to see. I absolutely want that. I want to know what our children are learning because it is getting very, very scary. And that is all I have for you tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Courtney. Next is R. Bentley Marlowe.
Can you go in front of me, please?
Sure.
Gotta get back up there a bit.
Sarah Marlowe, and I'm sorry, you'll have to tell us your last name. I can't read it. Sorry. Bentley wrote it, didn't he?
He did. We'll blame it on him. My last name is Fowdy. I live out in the Lionary area, and I have a 6-year-old that is at Homestead. And I just would like to share some information that 5 pediatricians have put out about COVID. The pediatricians, they plead for unity against COVID to keep the schools open and safe. We are pediatricians who have devoted our careers to the well-being of children. We want to protect children and provide them with safe, in-person learning environments. Over the past 18 months, the deadly COVID-19 pandemic has killed more than 625,000 Americans and caused chronic long-term health problems in millions more. Until recently, the silver lining from this catastrophic, widespread loss of life has been the relative sparing of children from serious illnesses and death. To date, 454 children and adolescents have died from COVID-19, and more than 4,400 have been hospitalized with critical illnesses from COVID-19 related multi-symptom inflammatory syndromes in children. During the prior school year, we prevented excess illnesses in children through careful public health risk mitigating strategies, including wide-scale shutdowns, universal masks, and virtual schoolings. Unfortunately, the recent surge of the Delta variant now changes the risk calculations for children. The Delta variant currently accounts for the vast majority of COVID-19 cases in the United States. Evidence shows that the Delta variant is particularly dangerous in unvaccinated populations, which include the children under 12 of age and most children 12 to 18 years old. This variant is 2 to 3 times more contagious than the original COVID-19 virus, resulting in more children becoming infected. Implement public health safety precautions for children. According to data from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the number of children hospitalized with serious COVID-19 infections in the U.S. reached a record high at nearly 1,900 as of August the 14th. These numbers are outpacing the capacity of pediatric hospitals to provide care. Some states are now seeing pediatric mortality rates up to 0.03. Although this percentage may seem small, it's important to consider what happens when it gets applied across a large number of infected children. More specifically, in Crossville, that would be at least 2 of our children dying from COVID-19. It may not be your child. It could be your niece, your nephew. It could be somebody in your family. It could be your best friend's child. And I think that, you know, the numbers seem low, but that needs to be driven home that this could be somebody that you know's child if it's not your child. Some states are now seeing, for example, from August the 5th to August 19th, more than 301,601 new COVID case-19 were diagnosed in children. The mortality rate is .03, which translates into the death of 90 children in just those 2 weeks alone. To put these numbers in perspective, the record high for flu deaths in children across the U.S. was 199, which occurred in the 2019 date.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd appreciate if everybody in the audience, whenever the speaker is talking, if y'all would please keep the noise down so everybody can hear. Thank you. Next is R. Bentley Marlowe.
Hello, everyone, Chairman Inman and members of the board. My name is Robert Bentley Marlowe. I live part-time, most of the time, at 322 Douglas Avenue in Knoxville. And when I'm in Crossville, I stay at 5746 Highway 127 South in the Homestead area. I'd like to speak to you today because I'm quite concerned about what I see going on in my hometown. I remember Crossville and Cumberland County being a place where everybody would work in the interest of everyone. We'd set our partisan and bickering aside, and we would do what was right. We'd do what was necessary and needed to take care of those most vulnerable amongst us and to come together in the interest of the greater good. To that end, we heard from my mother and how personal it can be, and she's not alone. We have a very elderly population in this county, and many of them are serving double duty, taking care of their even older parents and their children and grandchildren. And they are all at risk, and the likely source of risk involves their school children who are contracting it. From looking at your webpage, it seems that over the last 2 weeks, at least as of the most recent data I could find, which was 8/13, that in the prior week before that, there was a 248% increase in COVID instances amongst the children. There was a 157% increase amongst the staff. That's counting cases and quarantines. But both of those mean that people are not in the classroom. We're having learning loss that we've heard is damaging. It's irreversible in some instances. We can stop that. It's pretty simple to stop it, and it starts with a mask. I have a copy of the governor's Executive Order 84. I'd like to highlight something about that. It pertains to students and students only. I do not believe that there's anything that would prohibit this body from requiring a mask of every teacher and staff member. I also do not believe that executive order allows for a mask mandate provided that it provides an opt-out position. I believe that these are tools that the governor has found effective and believes are reasonable balances of personal liberty and freedom. I urge you all to suspend your rules, suspend your agenda, and take up an emergency motion given the grave and dire situation that this state and county are facing with ever-increasing COVID numbers. That's all I really have. I urge you all to do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marlowe. All right. That concludes our community comments. And while everybody is...
I would agree with that.
While everybody is still here, okay, let me state for the record that as far as the mask policy, right now, any parent is allowed to have their children wear a mask. Any teacher, any staff member is allowed to wear a mask anytime they feel the need to. So we have not discussed a mask mandate, and as of yet, okay. But that's the policy as of right now. All right, thank you. All right, getting back to the agenda, next item is the acknowledgement of elected officials. And forgive me if I have missed somebody, but I see Mr. Wendell Wilson, County Commissioner, and Mr. Jim Blaylock, County Commissioner. And I was saving the best for last, okay?
I was making sure you saw it.
And we have Cameron Sexton, our representative. Thank you for being here.
Do you need a chair? Are you sure? You're doing a fine job holding up the wall, though. We'll say that.
Next item on the agenda is the school board reports. Mr. Safety, the TLN report.
The TLN report, the issue that I'd like to bring out is the executive order of the governor, and I believe that Mr. Marlowe presented that fairly well. We have, and there's a reason why the governor has in his latest interviews, has said that wearing masks is important. In Cumberland County alone, we have had a tremendous increase in the number of COVID cases. That increase is going across the state in the same way. I know you all can't see it in the back there, but there's a graph of the increase in COVID cases. That doesn't include faculty. In fact, today's figure, on August 29th, August 25th, we had 70 active cases. 70 active cases. So I believe that the governor's request to encourage everyone to wear masks is a very legitimate concern. Now, some people, not me, believe that maybe the school system is acting as a super spreader event. I don't have any evidence at all at this point to indicate that the school system is a super spreader event. However, given the increases in COVID, this community and everybody in this room, as well as in the community at large, needs to be aware that there is a danger. My conclusion is this: going to school is not a super spreader event, but COVID is spreading in the system. Parents must consider insisting their children wear masks not only to protect themselves, but to protect others. Freedom is not free. It requires personal responsibility, and wearing a mask is a responsible action. Without this behavior, COVID may continue to spread.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Safety. Yes.
Do you have something to add to that?
Yes, she would like to respond to Mr. Safety.
Mr. Safety, you alluded to the governor's position regarding masks. I believe the actual quote from yesterday is, quote, "It is not my job to tell a parent what to do, but what I would say is that if you want to protect your kid from the virus or quarantine, the best way to do that is to have your kid in school with a mask." That is a direct quote from Governor Lee.
Thank you.
All right, since we're talking about reports, Mr. Sexton, would you like to give us any kind of reports? Since you're here.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for coming out today, and I appreciate the opportunity. And you know, I think we were on some of you might have been on a conference call yesterday where there was some information that has been put out that may be causing some issues. And so one of the things that I like to clear up, I'm not here to push you in any direction. That's your job, and that's a tough choice that you all have to do. But there's no need to talk about the executive order. It's clear of what that says and what Governor Lee feels like. I think some of the other things to clear up is, and I'm sure y'all have heard this, but it'd be good for the people here to understand too, is the state's not looking to remove BEP funding based on absenteeism due to COVID or anything like that. So there's no worry in that regard that that's going to happen. The other thing is also to know that you all do have the authority to set policy. And so you have the ability to set policy on quarantine guidelines, if you want to do contact tracing or not. You also have policy to set for students and teachers. You can do that as well as quarantine. Wilson County, just 2 nights ago, basically said that unless you're showing symptoms, you don't have to quarantine, you can continue to come to school. And I think you've seen other school systems looking at that approach, because from what we have seen, a lot of the absenteeism is due to quarantine, and that's what's driving it with bus drivers, with teachers, with everybody else. But you have the ability to have that policy. The CDC and the Department of Health, it's all recommendations. There's nothing in there that's a mandate that you have to do anything. You all have the flexibility to do that. And one of the things I think it's important to say is this issue we thought was going to end last year. It did not. We're here this year again. And I think what the public is looking for is their kids going to school, but knowing this could be a factor in 5 or 10 more years. And so they want to have the ability to understand what the policy is, what the standard is, how to operate within the means that they feel comfortable with, knowing that we don't want to have to come back every single year and revisit the same thing. And last year, I think parents, everybody kind of was unknown about what COVID was. And I think you've seen this year people having a little bit more knowledge and feeling a little bit more comfortable, but also realizing that this is a long-term thing that's going to be here. It's a lot more like the flu. It's not like the measles, mumps, or chicken pox. You got that once and you were done. This is an annual thing. And you know, the vaccine helps you limit the ability to get it. It doesn't stop you from getting it. And so part of it is, from the state direction, is I'm trying to refocus the state and putting out guidance on long term. How do we handle this? How do we move forward? Because we can't come back here next year and continue to do the same thing. You can't come back the year after. And so we just need to make sure that you all know that you all have the authority to set that for your county, for your area, the way that you want to go. It may be different than Wilson County. It may be different than Williamson County. That's your prerogative. But you do have that authority to do that. And I'll be happy to take any questions whatsoever. But in the end, you know, I think what parents are saying is exactly what you all are debating and what they have been here talking about. Is this issue is very dear, and the data indicates, if you look at the data, hopefully y'all, I think the director sent out the link to the state website about what is happening. But I had a conversation today with the mother when I was visiting in Knoxville who had 3 kids in school. And her perspective has changed from last year to this year, right? And one of the things that she talked about was there's a realization at some point in our lives we're all going to have COVID. It's a matter of when you're going to get it, not if you're going to get it. And the other thing that we learned from last year is when some schools were shut, when there were masks and there wasn't the interaction, that we delayed the onset of other diseases like RSV. And so now we're dealing with RSV in kids, which should have been dealt with in the fall and winter. It's now being dealt in July at the same time that the Delta variant came back. And so did we potentially, there's a debate, did we do more harm last year offsetting and having 2 diseases combining at the same time, which then could lead you to multiple inflammatory syndrome, which is another issue. And so the thing is as we move forward at the state level, I was hoping we could have a special session. Hopefully we still might. The House is ready. Not to dictate terms, but to start a conversation that needs to happen about how we move forward and how do we get from the next 5 years to the next 10 years. Because more than likely, you're going to get it. More than likely, the child's going to get it. And there's also a broader conversation about the health of our population that we need to be having. Because the one thing that we have learned from COVID is if you're immune compromised, whether you're old or young, if you have certain health parameters, you're at more risk than others. And so there's another conversation that we need to have as a population about our health and what we do in that endeavor. So I appreciate the time to be here. I'm happy to take any questions if y'all have any. Yes, ma'am.
You knew I was going to ask.
Yeah.
How you doing? Good
I'm
to
good.
see you, Mr. Speaker.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming down. What's concerning me, I have 2 concerns right now. And Dr. Lisa Piercy, she mentioned yesterday that here in Tennessee, just in the last 7 days, there have been 14,000 pediatric cases of COVID and 1,300 emergency room visits for these children. At the daycare centers that my organization runs, one of them is completely shut down, and it's the children who are sick, not the teachers, it is definitely going younger, which is obviously a concern. My second concern is with our governor's order. I believe that there was a negative impact in that when somebody is quarantined, when that child is quarantined, we can't do virtual anymore. So when that child comes back, and let's say you have 2 or 3 kids in a family. So you've got this one's quarantined, so now this one's going to piggyback on this one, and now this one's here, so now you've got a family group. So these kids now go back to school, and they come into a classroom, and you've got already short staff because teachers are out, we can't find subs, and they can't catch that child up anymore. It's causing a snowball effect. So there's something that we need, and I don't know what the answer is. That's where my brain is kind of like, what do we do? From a parent perspective, if my child has to be quarantined, how do I get them to make their work? And I know a couple people have mentioned it, and I mentioned it to Dr. Maxwell today, that I think part of the problem is the incentivization of the final exams, that, if you miss so many days and you get so many days. We need to make those finals optional. If you need the final for the grade, take the final. But if you don't need the final for the grade, don't base it on being sick or not. Because if you're sick, you need to stay home. And so to use that as an incentive, kids are going to school sick because they don't want to take finals. And that's wrong. That's a wrong message. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, very good. Well, as far as I had 2 kids that went through high school here who didn't want to miss a day because they wanted to get off the last X number of days, right? I think you all have the capability to control that yourselves. I think that's an internal policy that's unique to this system. Y'all have the capability of saying that COVID absences don't count towards that, if that's what you want to do, right? I mean, that's a pretty easy fix, and that's your all's decision. I think as far as remote learning, you still have the capability to do remote learning. You have that capability right now. Virtual school option, and I think sometimes we interchange words, and so virtual and remote, I'm going to say they're the same thing. I'm not even going to try to parse the words. So if the school system, we extended the deadline in the state to June of this year to school systems who wanted to have a virtual school option or a remote learning option, right? That deadline has passed. Not a lot of people did it, and there's issues with that because there's certain areas in our state that don't have great internet connection, and that causes concern. And so it may not be an option for everybody, right? And so that's one reason why that passed. But right now, you do have the option as a school system to have remote learning, and you can have it based on teacher if they want to do it or whatever you want to do, but you have the capability to have remote learning on an individual student basis or based on classroom. The only thing that you can't do is shut down the school or shut down the school system. As long as you have an option for in-person learning, and there's people in the school, you can do remote learning as long as you want to do it for those kids who are quarantined, right? That's a viable option that you can have. Once again, that's your all's decision to make. You can even do that on snow days if you wanted to go that option, right? I mean, you're not limited to just doing it for COVID, right? So you all have the capability and the authority to move in whatever direction you want on that. You just can't shut down the school system or the other. And your first question again was about, remind me again, that was the second one.
It was just more of a statement. It was just talking about how these cases are skewing much younger.
That's right. And so that's a good point.
It's a different ballgame than it was last year.
Well, it is because the variant has changed.
Exactly.
And so what the data does show you is people who, the population who is vaccinated, and when you look at the state's numbers, the most vaccinated people in the state of Tennessee are those between 70 to 79 and 60 to 69. And it's like a step going down for every age bracket, right? The lower you get to 20, the less likely it is that they're vaccinated. What you know about the cases go up the steps, reverse, right? So the ones who have the most cases are the ones who are younger, who are not vaccinated, and it keeps going up because there's not really many cases for those over 70 years old. That's what the data shows. But at the end of the day, the people shouldn't be mandated to take vaccines. I don't think you're going that way. But it really should be a conversation between them and their healthcare provider, whether it's a physician or pharmacist, to make that decision. Because even when you went through the measles back in the 60s, it still took 5 to 6 years to eradicate and get measles down. And they were killing just as many kids in the nation. They were averaging 500 kids a year in the measles. the difference between the vaccines for measles, mumps, and chickenpox is when you take it, you're more than likely you're not going to get it. It eliminates the ability. It's an immunization. You're immune. The COVID vaccine is not an immunization. All it does is limit the likelihood of you potentially having a more severe case. When you look at the cases for kids, the kids that are rising are those ages who are between 7th grade and high school. That's in the state who has the most cases right now, which are the students who can be vaccinated, right? And it's going into the lower grades as well to a certain degree. But saying that, once you have to answer some questions first, because there's been 200, and I think just recently been reported, I think as of the day, 202,000 cases of kids who are younger than 20 in the state of Tennessee. Out of those, there's been 15 deaths, which means that's a survival rate of 99.99993%, right? I'm not minimizing the 15. Those are somebody's kids. But at the same time, you also have to make decisions based on the data and what you feel the data shows you that you need to do, right? And those are the conversations we need to have, because we're going to be right back here next year, right? And the problem is the next variant, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be less severe and less infectious, or it could be more. But we know that this is a everlasting problem that we didn't give to ourselves, that someone else outside the country brought to us. But we're here to deal with it the best we can, because what we saw with TCAP scores was abysmal when we try to do remote learning like we did last year, all across the state. And so the task is trying to figure out how to keep kids safe, how to mitigate it, how to allow parents to have their say on what they need to do for parental choice for the health of their child, as well as trying to continue to improve education.
Absolutely, and as the governor said, and the best way to do that is have your kid in school with a mask.
Well, but he'll also tell you,
That was his fault. That was his fault.
I got it, it's fine.
Order, please. Order, please.
What the governor will tell you.
Thank you.
I've had many conversations with the governor. Is he believes that parents have a right to make that decision for himself. But as a parent, if he was going to do it, he would have masks, which is his choice. But he also is not going to tell the next parent that they have to, because that's their decision.
That's right. That's exactly what he said. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Boston.
you made a brief comment about the state of Tennessee is not looking to withhold BEP funds. If we created a policy where the children are excused if they are quarantined, would that affect our BEP?
No.
Thank you.
No, would not. Your BEP is not, even last year there was a hold harmless, even last year. But this year they've incorporated a system, and I know Ina has worked on it. And so where if the kids are absent, they're not going to be, the BEP funding is not going to be held. Now, if someone gets withdrawn from school, that's a whole different story. But for COVID, they're not going to.
Due to the COVID?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any other questions from the board?
I just caught the money aspect of it.
Oh, I understand.
Sammy?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Sexton. Next item on the agenda is board members' report from any training. Any board members had any training? Okay, we'll move on. Next item is the legal report. Mr. Patton.
There is no new litigation.
Hallelujah.
Exactly. And the only open litigation that's currently, the board's currently involved in is the Jewel situation, and I have not received any updates. Hopefully we'll have something for you next month.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Always good when there's no litigation.
Absolutely.
Next item on the agenda is the director's report. Dr. Maxwell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Inman. The first item on the report tonight is the Coordinated School Health Report, and Ms. Marsha Polson is here. This was in your packet. And a special shout out to our Coordinated School Supervisor and the nurses that work with her and do a fabulous job of taking care of all of us, and we do appreciate them.
We appreciate all of you. I just gave you some basic numbers from last year, the number of visits, the ones that returned to class, and that's down from normal because of the situation. But some of the screenings and referrals that we did, just some basic information for all of you. And certainly, anybody have any questions?
I have one question.
Oh, I've got plenty of questions. No, not about that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just have one. I had heard from a couple of different teachers that have sent children to go to the nurse because they'd been coughing and as one put it, a barking cough. And then the child was sent back to class and she said the child couldn't even lift their head back up. So she sent them back. So what's the criteria for you guys at this point? Because I know everything's kind of, is it a cold? Is it whatever? So what's the protocol from that point to contact a parent and have them come pick that child up?
We have, if you're talking about COVID-related symptoms.
Or anything, or flu, whatever, yeah.
We have an algorithm that the Department of Health has given us that says if you have one symptom, it's a certain symptom, then they can go back to class. If you have one symptom that's a higher risk symptom, then we call the parent and we ask for clearance before they come back to school. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's based on what kind of symptom it is and, the severity of the symptom.
Thank you.
Now, are you taking temperatures of the children as they come into school?
We are not taking pictures of the children as they come in. I think the CDC had talked about it last year, way before we stopped taking temperatures at summer school. They had decided that fever is not your number one symptom for COVID, and especially in children. So the recommendation to do the screening at the door was no longer a valid recommendation for, screening out kids. Certainly, if they come to the clinic, if they have any of those symptoms, the first thing we do just about every time is take their temperature. So, and then we have, thermometers in some of the classrooms, with the smaller kids so that they can take temperatures if they need to.
Do you feel, well, let me phrase it this way. At this point, when a child who is not feeling well is referred to a nurse, they are not required to wear a mask in the nurse's presence. I would like to see that procedure change.
And we have talked about that among my nurses, and certainly we will offer the child a mask if they're sick and you see them, they're barking, coughing while they're sitting waiting on us to get to them. We're going to offer them a mask till we can, define what's going on with them.
Mr. Inman, I'd like to entertain a motion. And that motion is to require students who enter the nursing clinic to wear masks as a protection for our staff.
Now, don't forget that we have daily children who come to visit us for various reasons, procedures, an inhaler, a medication. Are you wanting to mask all of those children as well when they come?
For the duration of the time that they're in the nursing clinic, in order to protect their nursing staff.
People, please, we're not in community comments right now, okay? Thank you.
I think that's a safeguard for your nurses.
And we don't have a second on it yet either, so.
And you can't distinguish, unless the nurse is well aware of the conditions for the child to come in, then it would seem that requirement to wear a mask would be a simple procedure. Now, if I'm looking at what you just said, and it seems like if they come in for what kind of problems? Asthma?
Daily medication.
Daily
asthma,
medication?
You know, treatment, daily treatment. Yeah, we do.
I would like to make that motion and then have a discussion.
All right, your motion is that everyone that comes into the nurse's station must wear a mask while they're in the nurse's station.
Yeah.
I'm going to second it just for the basis of discussion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second.
Okay, how do we distinguish, for the discussion, how do we distinguish? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so here's my issue, and I couldn't do it unless I had a second. I could not discuss it. That's why I did the second the way I did, so the audience understands. My problem with that motion, Mr. Safdie, is as much as, we'd love to see everybody protected, is with the governor's order, I think that's going to trump anything, and our hands are tied. So you can say we want this to happen, but if a parent provides documentation saying, I don't want a mask on my child no matter what, it doesn't matter, it's a moot point. I think the better position to take would be to encourage parents that if their child needs to come to the nurse's station, would they be willing to have some kind of face covering like we did last year, not necessarily mask, a shield, for their protection as well as the nursing staff. But I don't think that we can mandate. I think it's a moot point.
Well, the problem I see with that is approaching this as a systemic issue.
I agree.
And if we don't pass this, then what guarantee does this board have that we're communicating with the parents that it is important for them to consider the health of the nurse?
Yeah, that's the problem, is we don't. We got that taken away.
Well, we don't have that taken away. I think there's a way of communicating with parents that it's critical, and that it's just not enough for the nurse to say, oh, if you want, you can wear it. I think we need to get involved with the parents to communicate what we would like their children to do when they come into the nursing station. Okay, that's what we need to do. And then if they opt out, then that's fine, because the parents have had a say. I guess that's what you're saying too,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
All right, so I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
And-
Withdraw my second.
And I will ask the director to, if it's something this board thinks is important, to direct the director to make sure that parents are communicated with about the importance of wearing a mask in the nursing station. And then if it's okay with the board, then, that's just one board member's wish. But do we need to make a motion out of that?
Yeah, if we're going to task her with doing something, we need to have a motion then.
All right, let me think on how to phrase it concisely.
Mr. Safdie, if I may,
Miss Boston.
while you're thinking of how to, word this motion, we have already got those students who are going into the clinic who have already been into the classroom. They have 9 times out of 10 been into the lunchroom, the cafeteria. They've been to special areas. So why are we just saying the clinic? What is the difference between the clinic, the classroom, the cafeteria, special areas, the library? I'm not sure that I understand the focus on just the clinic?
Well, because we have a staff member who sees all children who are ill. So the disease is spread through coughing, through other kinds of transmission like touching things and then or having mucus on their hands and rubbing the doorknobs and stuff like that. But that's beside the point. It's that there's a pinpoint where all these sick students are ill, come into the nursing station. So that nurse sees them all. Now, they may be in the cafeteria and have 3 or 4 students, sit around 3 or 4 students. They may be around, but every one of those students who are ill will see.
Point of order. We're having a discussion without a motion.
Well, that's true, we are.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, so Mr. Safety, do you have a motion, or does anyone have a motion?
I would like to, and incidentally, we'll get to the larger system issue of informing the parents and marketing the importance of mask wearing in another motion. Because right now I'm just pinpointing the nurses and protecting them. So my motion would be to task the director with establishing a marketing strategy that informs parents of the necessity of their children to wear masks in the clinic. Period. If we have to add the word "to protect the nurse," then add that to it.
We have a question.
All right. Yes.
I put in my 2 cents worth. That sounds like you're putting lipstick on the pig, which is making it a big mask mandate of sorts. That's just from
Point of
my
order.
perspective.
We don't have a
Well,
second.
I mean, I don't know much on this. I'm gonna.
I understand. Hang on. We need to have a second before we can discuss the issue. Is there a second to Mr. Safety's motion? No. So no second to the motion, so the motion fails.
Talking about the nursing.
Hang on just a second. Ms. Parrish, you had a question for Ms. Polson.
Exactly have a question, but I do know that most everybody that's a nurse is going to wear a mask regardless. And I don't see, if we got a nurse in a station at the school, if she feels any threatened, she should be the one wearing the mask.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Parrish.
I mean, you see these nurses running out there, always got a mask.
All right. My next motion related to this topic is to ask the director of schools to conduct a survey of faculty to determine how many faculty and staff are vaccinated.
Okay, please, people, okay, please hold your, we're trying to conduct business here. We'll get to it. Survey to ask faculty and staff. Ask faculty and staff about their vaccination status.
Vaccination status. And if we have a discussion, I'll tell you what my reasons are.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll give him the second for discussion, but
Okay, thank you.
for that.
First of all,
Okay, hang on just a second. We've got a motion by Mr. Safety and a second by Ms. Cargy. Discussion.
First of all, such a survey would be completely confidential and handled by the director of school in the appropriate manner. Second, the report, the summary report, would be given to a school board with just a generic, general number of those vaccinated and those not. Before we have a plan of action with our staff and with our faculty, we need to know at a particular moment in time who has been vaccinated. Okay? We don't need to know the individual. That would be kept confidential in the human. I imagine, Dr. Maxwell, you have the methods to keeping those kinds of reports confidential. It could be an anonymous. I don't believe in an anonymous survey. I believe that, one, if the person has not been vaccinated and they lie about it, okay, then they are insubordinate. Okay? It is a school responsibility to know what the health risk is among their faculty, and that is a simple way of determining future outbreaks. Second of all, do we have a legal issue about whether or not it's legal or not to ask for responses to a survey?
Mr. Safety, you asked me to look into that prior to the meeting, and I did. You've got to be careful about how you do it, but it is legal to do.
Would you be on the watch to answer any questions from the director of schools and the human resource officers on what is legal and what's not?
If this board votes to do that, certainly.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's a bad idea. And the reason why I think it's a bad idea is I think it's dangerous. I think it's putting our staff into a position that they may feel very uncomfortable with. I think perhaps a better, and I understand why you're saying it because you want the data, and the data is important. I'm right there with you. I'm a data person. But I think perhaps a better way to approach this might be to go to TSBA and ask them to maybe do a statewide, and if they want to run a statewide generic to get a feel, a vibe, then we can compare those numbers to our local numbers and kind of get a feel for data. But I do not feel comfortable at all asking our staff to do that.
Now,
Hang on. Mr. Safety, hang on just a second. I need to ask anybody else. We need to spread it around, okay? Does anybody else have a comment or a question? No? Okay, Mr. Safety.
I just wanted to say I respect your opinion. If there is not going to be a vote on this, then I will withdraw my motion.
Well, we've got a first and a second on the floor. Unless you're pulling your motion, we're going to have a vote.
I'm going to pull my second.
I'll pull my motion.
Okay, withdrawn.
And the third motion I would like is for the school system to asking Dr. Maxwell to organize a parent survey on parent attitude toward vaccination and high school students. How can we make a decision on what policies to make unless we have substantial data to back it? Okay?
Okay, hang on. All right, you want to task Dr. Maxwell to survey the parents?
High school parents.
High school
Parents
parents.
with high school students.
High school parents, okay. On their
Vaccination status.
on their vaccination status or on how they feel about vaccinations?
Vaccination status. of their children.
Of their children? Did you just say their children?
Vaccination status of their children.
I just had to clear that.
All right. Okay. The motion is to task Director Maxwell to survey the high school parents on their vaccination status of their children.
Yeah, and that can be a completely anonymous service.
Okay.
Mr. Patton, could you please advise?
I don't think that would be advisable.
I would withdraw my motion.
Okay. Good job. Thank you, Mr. Safety.
On my 3-part losing streak.
Thank you, Mr. Patton, for your advice. Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Polson?
I have something to say.
Yes.
Would you like to finish your report, please?
I really didn't have a whole lot to say. I just want to give you a little bit of data and then answer any questions, because I know that there have been a lot of questions regarding what procedures we've been doing, and you know, again, fluidity of COVID has changed on a daily basis since day one of school when we returned last year. So, you know, things have changed and progressed, and we know a little bit more now, which has been pleasant that we know more. Our community and our schools have two things that they want to do. They want to keep our staff safe, they want to keep our kids safe, and they want to teach them. That's what we want to do.
All right. Yes, Ms. Hammond.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I just want to say, I thank you. I thank you for all the hard work that you and all the nurses have done. Y'all keep us going. You keep our kids safe, and I appreciate that very much.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Boston.
could I ask Ms. Polson?
Yes.
Could you tell me, what is the current protocol for,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that you are practicing for quarantine? Because my understanding is it's different at different schools. So what is your instructions?
We were just getting ready to get into that.
That's for another day?
No, right now.
Okay.
That was Dr. Maxwell. I was getting ready to ask her that question, but yes. Go ahead and please give us your protocols that you go through, and then I'll ask Dr. Maxwell her protocols.
So we ask parents to report to us if they have a positive case or a case that is an exposure. One, because we need to, mitigate the spread of disease, but two, because we need to have a tracking of that for attendance purposes. So, up till now, we have been notifying parents that there was a positive case. And hopefully that has helped some people. We do not quarantine, that is up to the health department or their primary care to do. We refer people to their primary care or the health department for guidance regarding any exposure they have. We have since the beginning of school and will continue that if we have anyone who comes to us, we will refer them to the health department or their primary care for guidance about the exposure, because they are clearly the healthcare providers in our community.
So we are not sending anybody home to be quarantined as instructions from the district?
So if a sick child comes to me in the clinic, they have those symptoms, that I send them home. We are asking them to stay home till they're cleared by a physician, but that's the only ones that we are making quarantine. We are making quarantine.
Only the ones that have symptoms,
Right.
that appear to be sick. Okay.
And then, if anyone asks me, I will lead them to the health department website, which has plenty of information about what you should do, should you be exposed to or test positive for COVID.
the protocols last year, because of it being so new and everything, I think we were actually quarantining some children. But this year, it's being left up to the health department to do the quarantining, because that's actually their job to do that.
And I get that. That's what Marcia and I talked at the very beginning of school that was going to happen. But then you get rumors and rumbles that we are sending children home to be quarantined because they've been in contact. I don't care either way. My concern is their school, their learning, their being out for such an extended period of time. That is my main concern. And you and I had discussed, we were not sending anyone home, that everything was on the medical provider. And I just was curious if that had changed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Boston.
May I add something,
Mr. Safety, go ahead.
I would like to defer my question to Mr. Watson.
Watts. Yes.
I was just curious, you were talking, we had a lot of discussion about nurses and safety. Just curious, how many nurses do we have out and how often do we have them out since it's such a peril situation during this? My question.
Well, that's a health issue that I don't want to disclose at this point.
I don't know the numbers, but I do know of at least one, because I've heard from them.
I just didn't know if we had a shortage or like it's so mass.
Right now
that we don't even have nurses for our schools.
I don't know about the nurses. Do we have a shortage of nurses anywhere?
I don't know if you've read it, but there's a shortage of nurses all over the country. But, you know, as far as having coverage, up till now, we've been able to cover every day at every school. Good job.
Good job.
All right, Ms. Hale.
Ms. Paulson. Ms. Paulson, so it's my understanding that if a child has COVID and they know they have COVID, like there's 2 children in that family, and the one child is kept at home, but the other child gets to go to school, and I mean...
Again, I would refer a family member to their healthcare provider or the health department, and the health department website that blanket tells them what they should do.
You and I had talked about that, and I was just asking because I had some people asking me, and so I just want to make sure that it's clear, that they understand. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Ms. Polson, when a medical professional has diagnosed, let's say, a family member, and they've asked the rest of the family to quarantine, do they contact you or the school, or so that we know that that child is out for a medically sound reason?
Yeah, they would contact the school, and the school nurse is receiving those calls.
Okay, my turn. I've just got a couple of questions. I had some concerned parents that was asking about the COVID policy not being updated on the website, and I think that's more of a question for Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Inman. And it was updated today. The website that Speaker Sexton referred to in his presentation was emailed out to the media and to the board last week. It was the Tennessee Department of Health website that contains that information. Marcia and I have sat down and updated the website. We have also released this afternoon parent procedures and responses for when their child has been diagnosed with COVID or have been told from a medical professional to quarantine. And before I share those with you, I would like to say that previously we were attempting to assist with phone calls from the health department with potential contacts in the classroom. From this point forward, our nurses will be, they will be taking reports, you know, parents calling them, but our nurses and Nurse Polson will not be making those phone calls directly to parents. We will be providing that information to the health department, and it will be in from the health department, whatever process the health department goes through, and they will be making those contacts. because our nurses are there to take care of our children. Our children have lots of needs, and so they just can't do everything all the time, and that's what procedure that we're following at the moment. So what we did, we released today, and these are on our website. Parent procedures and responses. This is a very brief outline of what to do should your child be identified as having COVID, or your child has been asked to quarantine from a medical provider. We will not be asking that. It lists the school's phone numbers for our district, and it lists ways that students can access their work. If you'll indulge me, I'll read the three different bullet points at the bottom. Student assignments, class notes, etc. may be accessible in Google Classroom. Assignments can be returned by email through Google Classroom or upon return to school. Or student work will be prepared and available for pickup in the front office for students that have tested positive and or in quarantine. Or if a family member or friend is not able to pick up the student's work, please notify the school and arrangements will be made for the work to be delivered to the student. As mentioned earlier, learning loss is a huge concern, and I'll address that in a later report. But we have also posted, this is one of the posts that you'll find on the website. And while we're discussing that, well, it comes with this next one. How will attendance be documented? Based upon emergency house rules from the State of Tennessee Board of Education, they have outlined what we can do as a district for attendance. And again, if you will indulge me, it says for the 21-22 school year, an LEA may adopt a policy for allowing students who are temporarily quarantined due to a positive COVID-19 test result or possible exposure to COVID-19 to participate in remote instruction offered by the LEA on a temporary basis during the period of quarantine. Remote instruction means instruction that takes place when a student is not participating in in-person instruction provided by a teacher within the traditional school setting. Then it continues and states, students who participate in remote instruction during a temporary COVID-19 quarantine period may be counted as present if the LEA monitors and reports attendance in accordance with the policy adopted by the LEA, provided that such policies must require monitoring and taking daily student attendance, which shall include daily periodic visual, verbal, and or written confirmation of student participation in their instructional hours at home. Examples of methods of confirming attendance include such options as students participating in a phone call with a teacher or with a parent or legal guardian support as appropriate for the age of the student, students participating in synchronous virtual instruction, and that means at the time that it's taking place, if we have a teacher that desires to Zoom with their students, they may. That is not mandatory of our teachers. That is an option for the teacher to decide. Students completing work in a learning management system, which would be our Google Classroom. Our kids and our teachers did a fabulous job last year with, we had already Google experts, but there were many that did great things with that. So that is our learning management system. Or students submitting work via hard copy or virtual formats or other methods that the LEA school identifies as appropriate. So when you visit our website, you will see attendance matters and how attendance will be documented. And it states there will be varying methods of communication between the school and student to document attendance. These methods include an attendance form will be provided at the beginning of the quarantine, and it'll either be emailed to the student or parent or picked up in person. And parents will document the days of instruction that the student was quarantined, and this will come back to our attendance clerks. And they have done a great job too. Sometimes we don't think about the attendance clerks and the tremendous job that role they play in this. Student-school communication may occur via Remind, phone calls, emails, Zoom, etc. Work may be submitted in various ways depending on the teacher's directions which may include uploaded into Google Classroom, attachments in emails, hard copies, etc. For high school students with the above attendance documentation, test exemptions will be granted as normal because once we have this documentation, these students are counted present in our student information system. And this would be from the very beginning of school up until where we're at now and continuing.
All right, thank you, Dr. Maxwell. That answered all of my questions.
Did not answer mine.
Does anybody on the board have any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Polson. I'm sorry. Somebody from the board will have to recognize her.
I recognize you.
Okay, hang on.
Ms.
We've got-
Courtney, correct?
Ms. Courtney?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to recognize Ms. Courtney to be able to speak.
Okay.
Thank you. I just have one question. For this virtual learning while in quarantine, makes perfect sense if they're not experiencing symptoms and they're sick. Is there, like my kid was sick, so was he wouldn't have been able to be on the virtual or be marked as attendance. So how would that work? Is his absences still excusable in this if they are truly sick?
If they're sick and they can't do the instructional piece, then it wouldn't meet those guidelines. So on that day, you would just note sick and unable to complete any assignments. And that would be an excused absence.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Polson. Your short report took a little while, didn't it? Okay. Next item on the agenda, I'm sorry, this is Dr. Maxwell.
You're fine.
This is your
No,
show.
no, you're doing
Go
just
for it.
fine. So the next item on the report is the SRO annual report, and Mr. Bo Magnuson compiles that for us in cooperation and collaboration with our school resource officers. And if you have any questions, I know Mr. Magnuson would be happy to answer those.
Nobody has any questions?
We had numbers go down, weren't there as much, but for the most part, it's right on track.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Magnuson. The next item on the agenda is from Mrs. Marlene Holton, our Special Education Director. This is participation in the American Rescue Plan IDEA Part B and preschool grant, which will assist our students with special needs, both school age and preschool age.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Carty, motion, and Mr. Brock with the second.
How much is the grant?
Any discussion?
How much is the grant?
That is a great question. And Ms. Boston, I do not have that in front of me. And Ms.
Can you
Is she here?
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the grant does?
What the grant will do, it will provide additional support to the Special Education Department for special education students. And Ms. Barnes, if you can pull up an E-Plan, I can give even more specific.
So this is for special ed preschool as well?
Yes.
Have we had this before? Has this been offered to us before?
No, this is a new grant, part of the American Rescue Plan.
Have we already submitted the application?
She has submitted the application, yes.
All right, any further discussion?
Just a second, we're waiting on it.
Internet's always slow when you want it to hurry it up.
This is a new grant.
Yes.
Why don't we go ahead and vote? She can give me the number later.
Okay, all right. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry. Sorry, I was trying to find that number. The next one is also submitted from Ms. Holton, and this is the SPDIG grant. This is a re-engagement grant. A few years ago, the district received this grant, which includes supports for teachers to help with differentiation with students with different learning needs within the regular classroom, within any classroom. And so this is a re-engagement of that grant that has been brought back, and she is asking permission to participate in this.
Move to approve.
Do we have any idea what this grant?
Okay, we've got a motion, Ms. Cargy, second by Mr. King. Now, discussion? Ms. Boston?
How much?
How much? I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
For the first one that you asked, $432,657.44.
432,000?
657.
I'm going to go 432,000.
Okay, there you go. That is the first one that you asked about.
Right.
Does the amount matter to the vote?
No. Well,
And the SPDIG is $10,000. The one currently that we're looking at.
The re-engagement?
Yes, it's $10,000.
Okay.
okay. Is there any further discussion?
I like free money.
All right.
And what do we do with these? What are they used for?
So this is a grant that is for teachers to identify differentiation strategies to be used in the classroom to help increase learning.
And we have chosen two schools to participate this school year. We chose South Cumberland Elementary and Crabtree Elementary. And the teachers have already engaged in a day's worth of in-service training. And we will do that periodically throughout the school year. And we'll also be doing walkthroughs to see how they're using the methods that we have trained them on.
So is that the 10,000?
Yes, that is the SPDIG.
Okay.
Access for all.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is Ms. Boston.
This is Boston. If you don't mind, I'm going to move to the podium.
That's fine.
Stays away from that floor. I want everybody to be able to hear me. What I ask for the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 grants to be put on the agenda. There seems to be some unknowns as to who has the authority over these grants. So for the last month, I have done the research, I have pulled the documents, and I have pulled policies, statutes, things of this nature in which to try to determine why this board is being left out of the decision-making over $21 million. When I'm trying to decipher this, the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 are actually sub-grants. The ESSER 3, there is a 109-page application. The state of Tennessee submitted that to the U.S. Department of Education, and the U.S. Department of Education reviewed their application. This is what we're going to do with the funds. This is what we say you have to comply with. State of Tennessee said, absolutely. They entered a certificate and an agreement. From that, the state of Tennessee, in their obligation, had to give each district a percentage that was based on Title I funds, how many students you have under that. Well, in all of the application and in the certificate and agreement that the state of Tennessee entered with the U.S. Department of Education, it refers to the LEA and SEA, State Education Assistant Agency, and the LEA, Local Education Agency. It never once referred to the director of schools, employees at the school system. It always refers to the LEA. Well, in going back, looking at our 6/24 meeting, the director's statements was, it was based on LEA's title as to how much each district received. At the state level, that's where a lot of our initiatives is coming from, and some of these federal dollars, and then other pots as well. We have to complete the insurance, and we will have to check on certain board policies to ensure that board policies are in place. First, it flows through the district, into the federal programs department, and then it goes through our finance department to make sure that everything is followed. All the policies, statutes, requirements, compliance. I am now best friends with Edgar after reading and trying to find where this board does not have the authority over those funds. We're not talking about normal $200,000 grant, a $10,000 grant. We are talking about $21 million. This board has had no input. We have been spoon-fed, and absolutely no question as to what our thoughts are. So I went further. The director of schools went on to say we are going to have an LEA public-facing plan, which is going to be 13-page report or documents that will live on our website. It will contain certain data. It will contain a spending plan. Once we have collected from all of our stakeholders, you all being one of our stakeholders, Ms. Timpson and our professionals being another stakeholder. At the end of the August, we have to collect the feedback and input from all of you and our community surveys. That is the approval. So you are saying that the Board of Education does not have to approve these funds. Our director said that is correct. Because when you initially say, yes, you may accept those funds, you are giving us permission to participate and trusting us that we will do the very best in following all of the federal guidelines that we are supposed to follow. So at the end of the day, we are stakeholders. We are, although we're elected officials, although we take an oath, although we are guided by statute, we approve board policy, we are no more than the people who put us in office. Mr. Inman, I'm not picking on you, trust me. I just want you to say, Mr. Inman said, but I believe that the director has already got the authority to expend the funds the way they need to. I just want to make sure that this is set up, that the only concern I have is I don't want to slow down the process. Neither do I. We have a golden opportunity here. This district, the LEA, has a golden opportunity. The ESSER II grant, the motion was made on February the 25th, 2021. What we are doing right now is giving Dr. Maxwell and central office the right to the right or the approval to pursue this grant. ESSER III, April the 22nd, 2021. This letter, and it was only a letter, there were no expenditures attached to that motion. This letter to grant permission to accept and participate. Motion to approve as presented. And that's what we did. Both motions passed based upon what was presented to us. Go a step further. TCA Code 491103, Board of Education definition, manages and controls respective local public school system. Local Education Agency, or LEA, is a public school system. Now, the definition of a board is we control and manage. TCA Code 492203, number 3, to manage and control all public schools under its jurisdiction. To manage and control, to purchase all supplies, furniture, fixtures, and materials of every kind through the Executive Committee. Powers granted but not required to apply and receive federal or private grants. That's your TCA code. We have been tasked, we have all taken an oath. We will manage and control this school district, the LEA. In the certification and agreement between the state of Tennessee and the U.S. Department of Education, it states the LEA, not anybody else, the LEA. Board policies. 2.80, all expenditures shall be approved by the Board of Education or the Director of Schools when authorized. Employees who authorize or contract shall assume personal responsibility for payment of the obligation and shall be subject to dismissal. Policy 1.101, to approve purchases outside the budget on a case-by-case basis in accordance with board policy. To approve funding for the district maintenance plan and capital request. 2.805, authorization to purchase shall be provided by the board. The DOS shall serve as the purchasing agent for system-wide purchasing. Now, Dr. Maxwell put a little insert in one of her presentations. Before grant funds are obligated or expended, the DOS or her designee shall review the cost of proposed expenditures and determine if it is allowable use of federal grant funds. That is our Director of Schools' jobs. She is to keep us in compliance. Because trust me, you don't want to go reading it. It's too confusing. Policy number 1.205, the board will authorize all expenditures. The decision of the board concerning these matters will guide the actions of the DOS and his or her staff. Grant applications, policy 2.40. Grant application and budget require board approval prior to the submission. If in-kind funds or matching funds are required, awarded grants and their proposed budgets require board approval prior to the grant acceptance. Policy 5.80, and I'm trying to speed it up. The DOS shall be the CEO of the school district and shall have, under the direction of the board, general supervision of all public schools, personnel, departments of the school system. The DOS is responsible for the management of the schools under board policies and is accountable to the board. If you look at all of these and you apply our board policies, if you apply Tennessee State Code Annotated, I'm not certain how you get around this board's involvement in the expenditure of $21 million. Their federal grant, it's federal money, but they're sub-grants. Our obligation is to the state of Tennessee. Dr. Maxwell said that her authority sits in Nashville. Well, that's just to make sure that we're in compliance. That's to make sure that it's an allowable expenditure. Who makes the decision before it goes to Nashville as to what that expenditure is? This board is certainly not, or if y'all have been having meetings without me and just didn't invite me, I understand. But we've not had the first meeting to discuss any expenditures. Today, we got, I think I didn't pull it off till about 4:30, to where, and I've not even really looked at it because I was headed this way. One of the expenditures was for a CCHS auditorium, $9 million. Did any board member sitting up here authorize or even was allowed to discuss?
Yes.
That's fine. In a meeting or privately?
Privately.
Okay, thank you. As a collective group, in a committee, that was never presented to us. That is $9 million. That is 1/2 of their federal funds that we have been so graciously given. My motion tonight is that, and I'm going to read it, that the Cumberland County Board of Education is the governing body with full authority to evaluate and improve any and all expenditures of ESSER 2.0 and ESSER 3.0 per state, federal laws, and per Cumberland County Board of Education policies. The Board of Education is not a stakeholder, but we are the governing authority to approve those expenditures. The Director of Schools will cease and desist any and all obligations of the ESSER 2.0 and ESSER 3.0 funds until such time that the appropriate committees and the Board of Education has reviewed and approved those obligations. That all expenditures, proposed expenditures, shall be approved by the Cumberland County Board of Education prior to any grant funds being expended. That all policies of the Cumberland County Board of Education will be complied with in determining the proposed expenditures. Further, that the Director of Schools shall provide the Cumberland County Board with all documents of previously submitted information regarding the proposed expenditures, and that any and all information such as surveys, administration input, stakeholder input that would assist the Cumberland County Board of Education in evaluating these and making an educated decision to do what's in the best interest of our children in order to allow the Board of Education to make informed decisions regarding the expenditures. Further, that the Director of Schools and all committees which may be involved in the evaluation of the proposed expenditures do so in an expedient manner so as to avoid any delay in the approval of such grant expenditures.
I will second that.
Discussion.
I thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We've got a second. Please don't ask me to repeat the motion.
Chairman, I'd like to repeat that motion.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you. Actually, I did speak with Dr. Maxwell when I saw the email come over with the revision on the agenda, as was our right and responsibility when we have any questions. And I just want to clarify, the $9 million for the auditorium is not just for the auditorium. There are several items in there, including HVAC for several schools to increase ventilation as part of the CARES Act, as part of those funds, those ESSER funds. You have to do certain things. And one of the things that is suggested is to increase and to better ventilate the areas, which I think is, definitely needed. So that's the first thing. The second thing I have, I know when we're looking at budget, as a member of the budget committee, we get recommendations from all of the different departments. I don't see any difference there than what our esteemed director has done. She's presented to the community. Here, what are your ideas? And then she has come up with different areas and different expenditures and a budget for us to approve. I don't believe that she's done anything out of line or out of her jurisdiction. In fact, I appreciate the excellent work that you and your staff have done, because that's a lot of detail. I write federal grants, so I understand what you guys have gone through. And finally, I would just say that I think that the motion in particular is extremely tedious in the fact that we know that there is at least one board member that has an issue with our director. We know that from the survey. So I would ask our board members. I would ask our board members to please keep that in mind when you're considering this motion.
May I respond?
Yes, Ms. Boston.
Thank you. I'm not certain who you're referring to that has a problem according to the survey. That is not me.
That's fine.
Well, then don't throw.
That's our stats.
No.
I just ask them to be considered.
But that is.
Okay, all right, listen.
But don't go throwing accusations that you have absolutely no idea.
Well, I don't believe she accused any one person. She just made a statement, and I'm just.
It has been made several times, it's been made in different meetings. It needs to stop.
What do you
She
mean?
doesn't know what anyone put on any survey
No,
personally.
none of-
So
no,
that
none of us
needs-
do.
That needs to stop.
This is
None
not
of us do.
personal. I want to do my
I
job.
understand. I understand where you're coming from, okay? But in all due fairness, I'll let Mr. Safety speak first.
Teresa, I'm not on the budget committee, so what was presented during the budget committee about these grants?
Nothing. I've sat on the budget committee now for several years. I can honestly say that, and Ms. Harris is not here on the night that I was going to give her a compliment, it's a matter of sitting down with us as a committee, explaining to us, this is what I think would work. These fall within the compliance of these ESSER grants. But to look at us and say, you have absolutely no authority over these funds is insulting. Because it could have been handled so much easier. If you call other districts, if you call other board attorneys, if you contact people that are dealing with the same thing we did, they've been meeting. There's different districts that have been meeting for months that have a wealth of knowledge on what these funds. We're not talking $200,000. We're talking $21 million. Sit down with me, talk with me, have a committee meeting. I think I've requested, to have committee meetings. That has not been done. I'm not saying that I'm going to disagree with you. I'm not saying that I'm going to disagree with the expenditures. What I'm saying is, I want input. I want to be able to do my job.
An opportunity to know what we are actually.
Mr. Brown.
Just a quick question. How much of this money has been spent? I mean, I know we've got this very large number, and I know that multiple surveys have been done to wide-ranging groups of people. So to come up with ideas of what the community and others feel like it should be spent on, I'm just wondering, how much of the money have we spent?
So there's no money that has been spent of ESSER 3 because the application has not been submitted. For ESSER 2, up through June 30, the only money that had been expended was the employee bonuses that this board approved, and then the county commission approved. So, Mr. Inman, may I address?
Well, I was just getting ready to say, we need to let the director of schools explain to us the process that she has gone through.
Sure. Now, the $919,000 was never approved by this board. What we did approve was a resolution to switch some monies around. But actually approving the $919,000 in a motion never happened.
Okay, Dr. Maxwell, you have the floor.
Okay, so first of all, I want to address a few statements that were made. And to begin with, why this board wasn't informed, no input. At the June 25th meeting in 2020, the board approved the ESSER 1 funding. At the February 25th, 2021 board meeting, the board approved the ESSER 2. There was discussion over the several, I think it was 87 pages that we discussed. Several members were on by Zoom, and and with those members that were on by Zoom, I was asked several questions about different line items in that budget in ESSER 2. With ESSER 3, the letter to participate was approved April 22nd by this board. And I would also like to go back to the fact that, you know, when these things are presented, that is an opportunity for input. In June, I went over and did elementary and secondary emergency relief for ESSER 1, 2, and 3 to give an overview. It included items that had been spent with ESSER 1, which at that point in time when that grant was awarded, the federal government said, how are you going to educate kids if there is a long-term shutdown? And that is exactly what those funds went for. In the presentation, it listed the items that we'd purchased, such as 2,047 Chromebooks, ClassLink setup for our teachers to be able to communicate with their students. Personal protective equipment was purchased. Cell phones for our nurses because we had to have individual areas for children that were affected potentially with COVID-19 to be taken. So to say that there was no input, and then with the stakeholder having no input regarding the stakeholder information for ESSER 3. Surveys were posted, and a specific email went to board members on July 14th stating that the survey was available and for the needs assessment for the American Recovery Plan, and that it would close July 28th at 4 p.m. On August 20th, a letter came from Federal Programs with a summary attached of the data collection from the community input regarding the needs assessment that was emailed out to all school board members. They were invited to come to the Federal Programs Office at your convenience to review the data in greater detail. To say that I have said that the board has absolutely no authority, I want to see that in the minutes. I'll go back and see that.
June the 24th, it states, I asked the question. This is the approval. So you are saying that the Board of Education does not have to approve these funds? Your response was correct. Those minutes have been passed and they have been authorized.
That's true, but my quote was yes, not that this board had absolutely no authority.
No, the question was, so you are saying that the Board of Education does not have to approve these funds? Your response was correct.
Well, Ms. Boston, I will tell you, I have worked in federal programs for 9 years, and I will never pretend to know everything, ever. Anybody that knows me well, and they know that I am a person of character and ethical responsibility. And I know it's not personal.
It is not personal.
Because I have emailed you twice back in June, and your last response to me when I asked you to come in and sit down with me, your reply was, when this is settled.
I said when this is resolved.
Okay, excuse me.
And that's fine. This is not on you, Ina. This is me urging this board to participate in the decision-making for the expenditures of $21 million.
Absolutely.
we have had, I mean, there has not been one meeting, there has not been one sit-down. I monopolized the meeting in, and I think it was in March. I think, Jimmy, you finally shut me off. Over questions. You can only go on so far in this type of meeting. I think Jimmy made the comment, or our chairman made the comment, we have no problems with it going through building and grounds and we going through budget. Nothing has been done. We have had, all we've been handed is, here's your piece of paper.
Well, and also let's go back to our budget committee meetings, because when the federal budgets were passed with the budget committee meeting in here in April and May, ESSER 2 was in that budget packet that you all approved. And then it went to the full board when the budget was approved in June.
I don't. Now, in our budget committee meetings, it may have been discussed, we never approved those funds.
When you approved the federal program packet, all of that was included. And then when we went to the budget committee at the courthouse, I was specifically asked about the $2.4 million that was designated in ESSER 2 for the capital projects by I think a non-member of the county commission budget committee.
If I approved ESSER 2, I apologized, but I was not aware that's what I was approving. I can tell you that, and there was no discussion.
May I say?
Yes, Mr. Safety.
I think, from what I am hearing, the process you want is to bring those budget items in a major grant, not only before the budget committee, but I would say that the only committee that doesn't need to be passed through the buildings and ground, but through the budget committee, and a special session be held with the budget committee that asks all the board.
Absolutely.
And I agree with that. I think that any major budget item needs to be brought before the budget committee. Now, if there are misunderstandings or if a process wasn't followed, I think that your motion will inform the director that this is what, if it's approved, the board expects.
That is all that I'm asking.
I
Is
understand
that
that.
we get to participate and we get to put some input. I'd really like to know what our principals come back, what their recommendations were. We have a golden opportunity at this point to do so much for our district. 21 million is about, I'd say 45% of our yearly budget. Those monies don't come along every day. I don't mind being informed. I don't mind you giving me a piece of paper and letting me read it. What I do mind is you not presenting and allowing me input on.
I didn't do it.
I'm not saying you, and I'm not.
And I agree with you.
I'm not being facetious. I'm being as sincere. This is very difficult to bring something like this to the front of the line. Is very, very difficult for me. I like harmony. I like for everybody to have a common goal, and I like to see great things done for our children. I just want to be able to do my job. Our board policy says, do your job.
Yeah.
TCA code says, do your job.
Can we read some, can you?
Well, hang on just a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Hang on just a minute, because I got to get my say in here.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Really?
Knowing Dr. Maxwell the way that I know, and watching her operate through the time that she has been here, and the fact that she has been the federal programs director for 9 years.
Well, not 9 years as director, but in that department.
Okay, but in the department, she was in the federal programs. I trust that she has gone strictly by the book on the federal programs that we're talking about. okay? And she just explained her process. But I understand where you're coming from, okay? But my concern is, at this particular point in time, if we go backwards and we go back to the committees and we go through everything and we change things, I'm afraid we're going to end up delaying the grant process, and then we're going to be without the funds.
Then I suggest strongly we expedite all of it. I'm available anytime.
Well, when is ESSER 3?
The application is due tomorrow to the state.
Can we modify that application once it's submitted?
There can be revisions made, but I have a few things that I want to add before we continue, if I may.
Sure.
So,
Well, hang on just a second. We've got a motion and a second on the floor. And before we go into anything else,
I do feel like this is important.
Okay, all right.
The needs assessment for ESSER 2, that is how those expenditures were determined. We were not required under a previous administration for ESSER 1 and 2 to do a needs assessment, because I knew, but knowing that a needs assessment is what drives federally funded grants, we did a needs assessment for ESSER 2. And we took that into, I've explained it before, we put it into the 8 buckets that the state told us to do. We had committees at each school, and there was participation. We took that data, and that's what determined the expenditures and the items that were written into ESSER 2. For ESSER 3, because it's the American Rescue Plan, a needs assessment was a requirement. A needs assessment drives what is allowable in a federal grant. I can't just say, I want to buy 10 purple, pink polka dotted school buses because that's what I want. If it doesn't show up on the needs assessment responses, I can't do that. Because when it comes monitoring time, they're going to come through and they're going to look and see and say, okay, you bought 10 of these, but nowhere in your data that you've got does it show that you needed these. And so I just want everyone to understand that it's not what Anna Maxwell wants. It's what that needs assessment determined, and that's why the summary was sent out last week for ESSER 3. And with the community engagement responses that had to be calculated by the Federal Programs Department, you can see when we were told many times by the state, the SEA, over federal programs, all stakeholders are important in this determination of ESSER. No one stakeholder is any greater or less than the other. And you'll notice that we were able to communicate with most all stakeholder groups that the state listed as potential stakeholders. Our Cumberland County Education Association, they received a survey. You can see that we had 38 responses from that survey that was sent out to all of those members. So, is there always room for improvement? Absolutely. That's the largest room in my house, is the room for improvement. But I just absolutely will not sit here and let anyone think that I have not done my job.
Right. Mr. Inman, may I respond?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A needs assessment was done. I can't speak for the other board members. I can't speak for myself. I have no idea what those needs assessment results came back. And there may have been other options. This board was not given that information.
Well, that's part of her presentation tonight, is giving us the needs assessment to tell us what.
The day
To
before,
tell us. And the day before it's due, we have no time to respond. We have no time to review. We have no time to question. I've not even seen the document yet. And that is not fair to this board to put us in a position that we're, here, I'm just going to give you this application the day before it's due. You know, I appreciate the fact that we've done a needs assessment. What were the results? What did our administration, what did our principals, what did our teachers, what did the community?
That was the summary that was emailed out last week, to my understanding.
That didn't tell me anything. I'm sorry, it just didn't. It's a requirement, and I understand it has to be done.
I
But
didn't understand
it did not tell me. I want, and in this motion, to sit down. Here's your options. Your job is to keep us in compliance and tell us what would be in compliance. Our job is to say, yes, I agree. No, I don't agree. Could we look at this? Could we look at that? What about the electrical at North? We were going to try to fit that in. I've not heard anything else about it. That's a very high ticket item. But to do that, to present that to us the night before the application is due on $15 million is not fair to this board.
Ms. Hamby?
I just want to clarify something. When we were discussing the $9 million for the auditorium, and Ms. Cargie said that includes the HVAC, and there's two different codes there. There's the HVAC for $750,000 besides the $9 million for the auditorium. So I just wanted to clarify that.
There's other items as well, is my understanding.
I'd like a roll call,
Okay,
Mr.
well, we're getting ready to. Mr. Brock?
Just a quick thing. Guys, Cumberland County High School's been promised an auditorium since 1962.
55 years.
It's about time that they had something like that. So if we want to pick it apart, we can do that. But
I just don't see the $9 million.
I'm not through. Sorry. I don't understand the motion because maybe I got lost in the length. If it could be either read back to me or restated in maybe a simpler, more direct way, and maybe even in a kinder way, because anytime you start using cease and desist, it kind of gets my attention that I've done something extremely wrong and I might have the sheriff show up. So, but anyway, it is your motion to do with as you will.
Thank you. This summer.
Okay, I can't read it back. Ms. Boston?
I've got the motion printed out. I can simplify it if you prefer that.
Please. No, seriously.
Seriously, the only thing I want is I want the ESSER 2.0 and the ESSER 3.0 funds to go through the appropriate committees and be approved. The expenditures be discussed and approved by this board.
And I will amend my second to go along with her summary.
And look, as expediently, if you want to meet tomorrow, I'm good.
Does that address the...
Well, I understand you being able to do that tomorrow, but the problem is we wouldn't have another board meeting.
We can have a special call.
Special call meetings.
Well, we can't do it tomorrow.
No, we don't have time.
No, we have to give a 24-hour notice.
Do it Saturday.
Well,
So may I suggest something?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it,
Yes.
do I have permission to
Yes,
speak?
ma'am, you sure do.
So we need to meet this deadline, and I want everybody to know, everyone has worked very diligently to make this happen. Now, I have exercised as much caution as possible to ensure that we do this correctly. My suggestion would be that this application be submitted so that it is submitted, because it would be sad to lose 15 point, for this district, 15 million. Everything that was written into those narratives came from the needs assessment that is required. With that said, once the application process is approved from the state level, then we can meet and you can suggest revisions.
let me ask you a question. And your comment just dawned on me. We had to do a needs assessment those expenditures listed on this ESSER 3 grant application, you're telling me that the #1 needs assessment was a CCHS auditorium?
No, that's not what I'm telling you. Those were there were 5 highest needs. We had to designate at least a minimum of 20% for learning loss, which we designated more than that. When you look at the expenditures for ESSER 3, we, as in ESSER 2, we hired a learning loss coordinator and we hired interventionists to help close that achievement gap, which we have employed. We are still looking for interventionists. If there's any retired teachers that would like to come on and work a 100-day contract, we would welcome you to work with our students to help bridge that gap.
Well, and I'm not, I don't want to go back and recreate the wheel tonight. You just said that we have to submit this application tomorrow.
We need to submit the application. Yes, it's due tomorrow.
I've got a $9 million item in that application. Can I revise that? If we all see, it's not just me. That's what I need to know.
The needs assessment drives the application process.
It's not what I asked.
The needs assessment drives the application process. With that said, if you all want to meet after the application has been submitted and returned, or we can say that we need to do a revision and the state would grant that, which I feel like they would, y'all meet and decide what you want to do.
Do we have the results, or is this the results of the needs assessment?
It's in there.
The needs assessment is, if you'll go to, this is the community engagement. Okay, within the needs assessment, we had to list our mission and vision, which I took from what you all had previously determined. We had to, our ethnicity. Then we had to compile all kinds of data. We had to speak to the different subgroups. We had to speak to last year, because all of these items that we're talking about, we still have to keep in mind that these funds must be used to prepare and prevent and respond to COVID-19. So we had to answer multiple questions. Data, again, that was requested.
Okay, so and then who made the final decision on the application that you're getting ready to submit?
The needs assessment data was compiled and the 5 highest needs were highlighted.
So you're telling me that a CCHS auditorium was the result of the highest needs?
It was one of the 5 highest needs.
Can you explain that? What do you mean? It was one of the 5 highest needs.
All of the data was compiled and disaggregated, and the items were listed that showed up the most times in the survey.
That's what I'm asking.
And it was one of the 5 highest items that showed up in the survey.
From
that entire collection that was presented.
Okay. What
Okay,
I would like...
well, hang on just a second. I've got to say something.
Sure.
You guys keep harping on the auditorium at CCHS. Well, no, you keep harping on the auditorium at CCHS. I want to know, are you saying that we do not need an auditorium at CCHS?
No, sir, that is not what I'm saying. Trust me.
That's not what I was saying.
Okay.
I come on this board in 2016, and we were discussing it then. We have been discussing it since. I am not saying that I would say, I'm not saying that I wouldn't go, yes, that's what we need. What I'm saying is, how did we derive
Well, I just wanted to clear the air.
this? And poor little old CCHS has been
Yes,
promised.
because since 1962,
Well, now, I don't know about that. I do know that
I do.
since SMHS was built, they had been promised an auditorium.
well,
I'm not saying that.
I know for a fact that CCHS, I've seen the diagrams. There was a diagram that showed an auditorium whenever it was first built in 1962, and it was the first thing that was cut.
Well,
And because they ran out of money. But
we
anyway,
always do. The
that's
only
beside the point.
thing is that if you are confident that we can pull this back together, we should have been doing this back in February or March. But if we can get if there can be revisions made on ESSER 3, even ESSER 2, I mean, I just like a defined, the definition of expenditures on the ESSER 2 that I'm not clear on. But we have not been given the opportunity. That's my biggest thing. So my motion is going to be,
Oh, I thought you already did it.
well, did you write it down?
I've got down that the motion is for ESSER 2.0 and 3.0 to go through the appropriate committees. That's as far as I got.
That is not the motion.
I know.
As expediently,
Go ahead.
no further funds be expended or obligated until this board has had an opportunity to go over and review everything and authorize those expenditures. I'm not saying we're going to disagree with them.
Well, I sure am glad you shortened it.
I'm turning this into
All right,
tablet.
Ms. Paris.
This auditorium for CCHS has been discussed since way back.
Yep.
And every year it's been up, every year I've been on this board, and that's been a long time, since 2002.
Well, I was,
Hey, look, now let me tell you something. They've been put off, and they've been put off, and they've been put off. I can see why they want to talk paying most expensive.
I can do it. But however, that's a big chunk of change.
Well, I know that
One
it is.
We've not even, I mean, it come out of the blue.
okay, we're going to do Mr. Safety, and I'm going to have Dr. Maxwell reply, and then we're going to vote.
I haven't
Okay.
given you my motion yet.
Yes, you did, twice. All right, Mr. Safety.
You know, during the budget process, we have public meetings to go over the budget, final budget. We have a board meeting to go over the final budget. It's rather a tedious and time-consuming process where those things are presented to the board, our CFO, and the director of schools goes over that. I see no reason why we should not have the same process for major grants.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and then the next comment is, how, I'm just curious, and I know this is a little side, but how did you come up with a $9 million price tag for an auditorium?
So we're not sure that an auditorium is going to cost $9 million, but we ask various architects what their estimation would be. And actually, it was less than $9 million, but also included in that particular line, it consists of additions, potential additions to other schools that have portables to be able to remove portable classrooms and build classrooms that are more easily sanitized and, you know, kids not having to come in and out of the weather.
And that's a good point.
So the full $9 million
Size of the auditorium and all this sort of stuff.
See,
So
and
the full
that's,
auditorium is not, I mean, the full amount is not just for the auditorium, it's also for adding on at the elementary
well,
school.
we got that document at such a late hour.
It was hard to
And I
read
was
it
at
all.
work, so I did not get a chance to completely review. Quite frankly, someone took a screenshot and text that to me, and that's the only, I have no idea what the remainder of it says.
Well, I had an opportunity, I came over and I sat down with the federal programs director. I took her up on her offer to come over and she went through everything that was on the needs assessment and
So
went through everything.
You're far ahead of the game than we are.
Well, I took her up on the offer, and but anyway, now Dr. Maxwell, and then we'll vote.
So this wasn't even, this was just, ESSER 3, we were not told until late spring to start with. The rules, I sounded like a broken record, I know, monthly. We are waiting for more direction. It continued to be that because the state was waiting for more direction from the federal government as far as the requirements. They have changed. When you go on the website, they will have where the forms were updated July 27th or August 2nd, where they are continually updating that information for ESSER 3. And also, with the auditorium, since that's a popular topic, because it was one of the 5, we just didn't say, well, we're going to do an auditorium. There are reasons why that auditorium is needed, and I agree, that's why it's shown up on the needs assessment so much. The performing arts, we have 4 elementary schools that will filter through CCHS. We are living through a pandemic. The performing arts is a major portion of a student's high school career. Raising our ACT scores, that is one of our primary goals. We all know ACT scores are money for our kids, for scholarships. We need to raise our ACT scores. This provides them with a facility to have the ACT prep courses in a space. It also provides them with the opportunity to take that 4-hour plus test in a comfortable setting instead of in the cafeteria. So I don't want the public to think that we just willy-nilly decided that's what we needed. It was based on results that were given to us. And there are reasons why that it was included, and there is research to support that it promotes those things with young people.
And that was on that list. I saw it. I read it.
And if you all want to stop the expenditures of ESSER 2 right now, then I have to know, because I have to send people home tomorrow. Because ESSER 2 is our learning loss coordinator, our interventionist.
We ain't sending nobody home.
I mean, if you're saying you're going to stop the funds until you all meet, I'm just saying that's the reality.
Okay, let's
If we could
rephrase
work
that.
on that.
We're not sending anybody home.
Okay.
Especially the interventionist and especially the learning loss coordinator, or whatever she's called. Are there any other employees that are dependent upon ESSER 2 funds?
Our ESSER 2 bookkeeper. The state suggested that we spend 5% of ESSER on employees.
Okay.
And we chose not to do that. We're spending a fraction because we wanted the money to be used.
Let's go back and rephrase.
I will amend or withdraw my motion till she amends.
The obligation where it comes to employees and staff. Continue. All other proposed obligations until this board or these committees can move forward, discuss, and make an educated, informed decision on the expenditures. I'm not saying we're going to change anything. I'm saying we should have the opportunity for that input.
Wouldn't that get rid of supplies as well and things like that?
So we have designated, because our interventionists needed laptops, we are in the process of purchasing those laptops for them, because with their benchmarking and assessments that they do as well as information, they need that equipment to be able to facilitate their jobs.
That's
So
22 laptops, right? We had 22 interventionists posted on the website.
23, including our coordinator.
Okay, so that's 22 and 123. I'll authorize that, I'll amend that as well.
And then we also included a nurse, an additional nurse, because of the pandemic. And these were items that were in the ESSER 2 budget that we went over thoroughly in March, when you had the 87-page narrative.
Teresa, it might be that we just we do this retroactively, but we start the process in terms of full presentation for ESSER 2. Because what was missing was the full process that this board needed to have in order to be responsible.
Well, she just got through saying that it was everything in ESSER 2 we saw, and we passed it as a board.
No, we
now
didn't.
I know we didn't do the committees.
No, we didn't pass it as a board either. I disagree.
But Teresa's point is that we have to start a process.
Okay, all right, but can we just limit that to ESSER 3? Since everything in ESSER 2 looks like it's
There's some
corresponding.
maintenance things that needs to be explained in ESSER 2, or I would like explained in detail.
I can do that right now.
I don't have it with me, so no.
But rather than stop the process, Teresa.
I don't want to stop the process.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I believe that the process that you're talking about is very reasonable. But the question is how do we want to handle that process with ESSER 2?
Just put it this way, the funds that have been committed in order for staff equipment, in order to move forward with the learning loss education, those do not stop until a committee committed. The remainder of it, let's get the committee together, let it be explained, and let's move forward. I don't want
Okay.
to hold this up. I want
Well-
to expedite it.
Okay, Mr. King? Which committee? I'm thinking she's talking about the budget committee.
I've not received any request to do this.
I'm sorry, Mr. King, I didn't hear you.
I have not received any request to have a meeting on this. I guess we're going to have to.
Okay,
And
all right.
Mr. Inman,
We need to vote.
could you do a roll call?
All right, Mr. King. Yes, we'll do a roll call. Mr. King.
I'm not going to ask where the my fellow guy is when we meet.
Okay, I amended my second to go with the new motion.
Okay, wait a minute, Mr. King.
I've got to have
Wait a minute,
motion
Mr. King.
again because-
Mr. King. Well, Mr. King's not finished.
Does Dr. Maxwell have anything else to say on these 4 attachments, since you didn't get to before we put a motion up?
We have provided the information here, and, we have dedicated hours to this, and we will, everything is a learning opportunity and that's the way I look at it, and if we can go forward, I want this board to be harmonious. I have said from the very beginning, I will do the best I can, and we have these items here. I just need to know what direction. I need to know whether I go in the morning and check to send this on to Nashville.
Here's my final question. My final question is the way that the motion stands, we stop certain expenditures, but it's such a gray area. My concern would be for you and your staff going back, well, now that could fall here, or that could fall here, and then are we bypassing
That's
the
all I'm
motion?
asking.
I think it's a problematic motion at this point.
If it could be anything that we can
Mr.
review.
Brock, please say it so everybody can hear.
Okay,
please.
I'm just saying, if her motion, if you're willing to word that in such a way that anything that has not been committed, then we will review. And I have no problem with that,
Yes, I'm willing.
and I think it'd be simple, and it's not making a judgment call on what.
Sure.
And putting any blame or anything on anybody for it. And we can get rid of some of the animosity that seems to be floating around.
Well, the comment was made is there have been, you know, hours upon hours upon hours put into this. Well, I'm only one board member, and I can honestly say, with the exception of the research I've done myself, I have not put in any hours in determining the expenditures. Now, I can tell you that.
Okay.
I'm only
it's time-
speaking for myself.
It's time for a vote.
Sure.
And we will do a roll call vote.
Tony, how did you word that?
I was working on just that. I'm just saying, if it's already been extended in
If
the
it's
sense
already
that
committed.
we hire people, we've ordered computers or whatever,
If it's already committed,
then.
that is allowable.
If it's already committed, then it's
Before any
allowed.
future outlays are made,
Can't say
it
that.
will at least go before committee.
That's right.
Can't say that.
Is that-
I can agree to that.
Is that something along
And
that?
that's on ESER 2.
But how does that affect her submitting the grant?
I think she's going to have to submit the grant,
Okay.
but she has kind of stated that, and hopefully I'm correct on this, that revisions can be made
That is correct.
to what you submit.
As long as it meets the allowability and it goes back to the needs assessment. And I can say this. It can go on up to the state chain and they can say, I mean, we may be able to think, oh, that's allowable, but they can say no.
Sure, and I understand that.
You know, I mean,
All right, we're going to vote.
Vote.
Does everybody understand the motion? Oh, please let everybody understand the
Please say.
motion. Mr. Brock,
No. No.
you're the one that came up
Motion is-
with it.
The funds, on the ESER 2 funds, the funds that have already committed, they are to stay committed. Any that has not been expended, that does not have to do with staff or staff equipment.
You can even leave the staff and the staff equipment that gets long. It's not being committed.
so
It will be reviewed.
It will be reviewed by the appropriate committees, and ESER 3 will be reviewed by the appropriate committees.
And I second that.
But she is to submit the ESER 3 tomorrow.
I don't think we've got another choice.
I don't either.
I mean, I'm not willing to sit here over trying to figure
Okay.
out whether I get to participate or not over
Okay.
$15 million.
All right, we're going to
Get the
vote.
money, and then if we,
We'll go.
everything will be explained to the committee. They can make judgments and see if there's something that can be done at that point.
That is correct.
If we
All right.
have a better idea.
We're voting.
Did you need?
Roll call
you need
vote.
him?
What?
Dr. Maxwell was needing you.
Yep.
I know y'all need to vote and us move on. With ESER 2, when you talk about committed or expended, every dollar amount was allotted in that grant.
Already committed.
So, if you so desire to make a revision from that, if it's in the needs assessment, then so be it. I'm here to help and facilitate, and that's what we will do.
But everything's been committed, correct?
Technically, it has, but if you decide to do a revision,
And we won't know that until we meet.
All right, Mr. Safety.
What was the motion?
Oh,
I'm sorry. That was poor.
yeah.
Yes. I support it.
Ms. Paris.
Yes, they're confused me and
Ms. Hale.
Yes.
Mr. Brock.
Yes.
Mr. King.
No.
Ms. Hamby.
Yes.
Ms. Boston.
Yes.
Ms. Carty.
No.
Chair votes no.
Sure they're gonna read it.
Motion passes 5-3 with one pass. Ms. Paris, do you want to change your vote? Or you want to vote no? Okay. So hey, people, please, we're trying to conduct a meeting. Hey, I don't know what y'all are upset about. Anytime somebody passes, they're allowed to go back and change their vote.
We're upset that we want the taxpayers' elected officials to approve all expenditures,
Well-
not one individual, and I am a big fan of Dr. Maxwell.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but the motion passed, so it's going to be done, okay?
Calm down.
Motion passed, 5-4. All right, now, we've been at this for 3 hours. I don't know about anybody else, but I need a break.
Yes.
So let's meet back in here at 9:15.
But it's gonna be crowded. I just want to stay.
Lana here.
And Oreos. I know, you want that round chocolate.
Okay, it's on there. What? Oh.
It may be rude to eat while we're in this meeting, but I'm hungry.
Oh, I've not had anything since
We'll get started as soon as Mr. King gets back. He's on his way.
You still have more to go over, Dr. Marshall. You're not done yet.
What's a hard time? Right.
Do what?
I'm not having the first cup of coffee. That's unheard of. I've not even had the first cup of coffee.
He's on his way. She's still back Okay, it's 9:22. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And we are at number 14E. Dr. Maxwell, do you need to have a vote on ESSER 2.0 and 3.0?
We don't need a vote. We don't need a vote on ESSER 2.0. ESSER 3.0, if the board is granting us permission to submit the application, which was given in April on the 22nd.
Then we shouldn't need to, right?
So are you saying we do not need to vote on this? Because it's got an asterisk, so it was, I'm assuming we were planning on voting.
Well, that was my plan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. King.
just to clear the air, let's vote on it. I move to vote to approve.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve by Mr. King and second by Mr. Brock. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Mr. Boston, was that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am?
Said sorry. I went back and corrected it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the motion passes. All right, we'll move on to
So Okay.
You're
the next
still
one.
up. I'm
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the next is the ESSER report, which several months ago I said I would present to the board each month. We are still awaiting details from the state and federal government as to what they want combined in these reports. So this is what I'm sharing with you, even though at this point in time it is not required from the state and national level because they haven't given us the requirements. We hired a learning loss coordinator. She was named, and I would like to ask Ms. Darcy Burnaby to stand for just a moment. She is a longtime educator. Very passionate about literacy, and I know I've already mentioned to her some folks that I know are very interested in getting involved with that, and so she's looking forward to that. She's been quite busy lately disaggregating testing data, assessing students for learning loss that were not in school last year, doing a plethora of things there. We have hired 15 100-day interventionists to provide student supports to bridge academic gaps and accelerate learning. We have been, the needs assessment data was collected and disaggregated. Projects from ESSER 2.0 that are in progress include playground equipment, bleacher replacement, and HVAC unit replacements, which I'm assuming will cease at this moment until we have a meeting. Those were in the narratives that were provided back in the spring. ESSER 3.0 plans, when I submitted this report to be added to the agenda last week, those were in the process of being completed, and we are still awaiting district requirements for ESSER reporting at this time. So it's just a great opportunity that we hope to be able to make a difference in the lives of children, because that's why we all do what we do. The next item that I have on the agenda is the 2021-2022 College Career and Technical Education Club Program participation. Dr. Maddox has submitted these with a cover letter for all of the clubs that participate in these programs. It's a great opportunity for our youth. It promotes so many things beyond just content knowledge, and it's a great opportunity for them, and I do need the board's approval for this.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Ms. Cargy, and I believe Ms. Boston beat you.
Anita, you can have it. I'm okay.
I've already got your name down. All right, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is the Cumberland County School Nutrition Program's bid packet for the double stack hydrovection oven, which would be a replacement for Martin Elementary and South Cumberland Elementary.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Hamby, and second by Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item that will need approval is the Coordinated School Health Grant funding application in the amount of $100,000. Ms. Marsha Paulson oversees this grant.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I've got Ms. Hamby with the motion and Ms. Cargy with the second.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What are these funds? I mean, what's the restrictions on these funds?
Ms. Paulson, are you still in the hallway? Okay. So and I may stand corrected, but this will include most of Ms. Paulson's salary, and then she also supports with these funds professional development for health and physical education, in services for our PE teachers, and then because each grant is different in what is allowable, she is allowed to offer incentives for wellness to the different schools. Teachers submit programs or activities that they've done, and they can receive whatever it is that maybe be the newest item on the market with physical education.
Can we buy PE equipment with this?
I don't know for sure, Ms. Boston. That might be a possibility, but I do not know the particulars.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes.
The last item you have there, which doesn't require a vote, but it's just really hard to believe that we're at the end of August. And I do appreciate each and every one of you supporting our students and in-person learning. And we are making great strides. In July, we have completed all of those tasks. And then in August, we have completed all but one. And we have board members that came on last fall that have been signed up for the new board member in-service training. Just a couple of FYIs that I'd like to call your attention to. The September 9th in-person White County training for the board with TSBA has moved to an online webinar. And we may do similar to what we did last year where we schedule a time for you to attend the training here at central office.
Can we Zoom from our homes?
I don't know yet because they've not sent it out, but I think it's just an online training where you could view it anytime wherever you so choose.
Okay.
Can I make, I really enjoy this getting together like that. I was going to ask you, we do something.
Absolutely. We most certainly can accommodate that. The other FYI that I have, we send our condolences and sympathies to Humphreys County and the city of Waverly for the devastating floods that they experienced last Saturday. I cannot imagine being that director of schools and the heartache that he has experienced, both with loss of life of students and with just the facilities. I can't even begin to imagine how they're going to they will come back, but I can't imagine how. So with that being said, our Family Resource Center is going to coordinate efforts to collect school supplies for the Humphreys County, Waverly City children, and the drop-off will be here at Central Services for any school supplies. If there are clubs or organizations within the schools that would also like to contribute to this drive. Also, as they've said on the news, money also is something that they are in desperate need of because you can only house so many bottles of water or so many racks of clothing. So that could be an option as well. But we will serve as a hub for drop-offs. And then the state Federal Resource Center director is coordinating with our Family Resource Center director. So if you know of anyone that would like to donate school supplies, they can be dropped off here at central office. And Steve, if there's some way that we can get that in the paper, that would be awesome. The rest is FYI. I do have really encouraging news. Our enrollment is 7,154 students. That is much better than how we ended the year. With around, that is the enrollment that you see, what you see is warm body count. That is the number of kids that are in a desk on the day that is taken. Enrollment, that doesn't encompass children who are absent. So as of day before yesterday, 7,154 students. That is exceptionally great news for this district. And we will see the benefits of that in the years to come because of that, because our funding is based on your second and third month and your sixth and seventh month of student enrollment. And each of those months counts a different percentage, with the second and third month counting a smaller percentage piece. It's left me the exact number, but then the sixth and seventh month of school is critical because that is a much higher percentage in the counting towards the BEP funding. So that's really encouraging news for us. So, that's something to be proud of. And yes, ma'am.
About that. I noticed that several schools are like 600 and above.
Yes.
Are those schools, can we accommodate that many students at those schools?
Fortunately, yes. Now, might we be getting to full capacity like at Martin Elementary? Absolutely.
Okay,
but that is it's just that would be a great problem to have. Are there any other questions?
To answer her question, the majority of the elementary schools, when they were built at 650 capacity. And Martin was actually a little bit more than that, but that was way back before the standards changed on the number of students per classroom. So, but,
I was just concerned because I was noticing how they're creeping up to.
yeah, I think Martin actually was, when it was first built, it was somewhere around 900 capacity. But like I said, that was back when you could have 40 kids in a PE class. So, but anyway, that's beside the point.
I have one question for Dr. Maxwell.
Yes.
Regarding COVID sickness for our staff. I know they didn't fall under that COVID thing, and we kind of approved something to be able to pay them their sick days. So how are we handling that for them this year? So that
Okay.
they're not being penalized if they have to quarantine?
So that's a great question. Last January, you all approved the COVID leave, and that policy was in effect from January 1st until June 30th of 2021. So there is no policy at this time, and they are having to use their sick days or vacation days, or if they are out of days, then it would be leave without pay.
Is that something that could fall under one of the ESSER grants? Can we?
So last year, what we did when you all passed this policy within the ESSER grants, and this was also included in the ESSER 3 application to include substitute pay, which would, the ESSER funds can reimburse the district for the cost of substitutes, whether it be for COVID or for professional development, for our teachers to, honestly, as a retention effort to keep our teachers and to let our people know that we value them. And so with that being said, for the people who have had to use sick leave days or personal leave days or vacation days, if the board so decided to extend this policy, you would just need to change the dates. They would be within our accounting system of days. The days would be given back, but then you potentially might, there are some who have had to take leave without pay, so you would be, paying them with a check back instead of just giving them their days back.
Mr. King.
Move to extend those dates.
Second.
Okay.
Through January.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Mr. Safety, was you gonna?
There's a motion on the floor, so I was just going to discuss, I'll turn it over to
Well,
Okay.
the only thing I'm asking is, this is a policy that we need to extend in order to cover that.
That was the motion.
The motion was what?
To extend the dates on the policy.
Does it not have to go through policy committee first?
Well, normally it would go through the policy committee, but since we're all in attendance, we can make a decision as a full board.
Can we, Mr. King, would you consider amending that to, I know the policy states that no one has to use their personal sick days. I also, if they ran out, we also made a motion last year that anybody who used an extended amount would be brought back before this board for this board to approve that reimbursement, that we would do so. Could we combine those two?
That's the motion to extend what we did last year.
Exactly.
Okay.
Through January.
Through January?
Or through
Or do you want to do January, or do you want to do through June, the remainder of the school year? It's up to you.
I agree through the school year.
Okay.
And
So,
I amend my second to follow that.
okay,
All employees.
Yes.
okay, we're going
What
to,
if the ESSER funds are not approved?
No.
No.
But they didn't.
oh, okay, but if,
I'm sorry,
So,
if I
no.
misunderstood, they could be used, ESSER 3 could be used.
So in ESSER 2, one of the line items that I reviewed was substitutes. for FY '22, which was to send our teachers to professional development and pay the substitutes, we can use substitute money that's in ESSER 2 to pay for substitutes, as well as that's written in ESSER 3 because ESSER 3 has a lifetime through 2024. And there was a $200,000 line item in ESSER 3 because the state told us to write it for FY '23 and FY '24. So that is in ESSER 3, and with it having been approved and an allowable expense with ESSER 2, I see no reason why it wouldn't be approved in ESSER 3.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ms. Boston?
That, you said it covers substitutes. What about those teachers that are out?
So they're using their sick leave days. And so in our accounting system for employees is called Siesta. And so what happened last year, well, in the spring from January to June, when you all had this policy, we had a process through Ms. Spray's office where they went back in and those days were credited back to the employees. Sick leave, vacation day,
Right.
personal leave.
That was no money. That was just added days.
Right.
Which eventually turns into money. But
Right.
then those teachers who have been quarantined or whatever for multiple times, we came back at the end of the year and we approved the expenditures to, and it was about $8,000. Now, is that what we're going to continue that as well?
That was in the policy, was it not?
Wasn't that if they got COVID or quarantined twice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. If they had to be quarantined extended times, then I think Kim explained, you would bring it back to us.
Right, I just gave you a total. They, initially with the first 10 days, they fill out a form for me that says they're asking for COVID leave, they bring the doctor's statement, we do our thing, payroll charges it to COVID leave, it doesn't hit their vacation days. Second go around, it hits their vacation days, but then they came back, I created another form where they applied for extended COVID leave, and that's what I brought back
That's
to
what
you
you
guys.
brought back to us.
And said, this is how many days that we're gonna reverse, vacation, whatever, this is cash out, and that's the $9,000 that we actually paid out to people that were on leave without.
Okay, Mr. King, is that a part of your motion as well?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay, so
I'll
we're
shut.
basically going to do the policy as we did last year.
I
We're
don't
going to
know that-
extend it.
I think that was a separate motion. I don't think it was in the policy.
No, it's
Okay.
not. The extended
Okay.
is not in the.
Yeah, see, I didn't
Okay.
think it was.
You guys just.
So we need to make two different motions,
No,
right?
Mr. King included it in his motion.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Mr. King included that in his motion, and
I seconded it.
you seconded it?
Yep. And we got to take care of our
Okay.
people.
Okay. All right, does everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, it passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. King.
All right, next item on the agenda is the school board committees. Mr. Brock?
A little bit of good news, there will be no first reading of policies this month. A little bad news, though, is be ready for some extra ones next time. You know, there's always a catch. And, of course, for second reading of policies, the policies that you approved last month continue to have our recommendation.
All right, and so we're voting on policies 4.200, 4.213, 4.205, 4.605, and 6.300 for second reading. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next item is athletic committee. Mr. Brock, you're up again.
Again, good news there. I think it's an excellent opportunity. I hope you had an opportunity to look at what was enclosed in your agenda. Cumberland County schools have been given the opportunity to be a part of a character banquet that is totally funded from outside sources and, might I say, very generously funded. And this is essentially to recognize not someone just because he or she may be an outstanding athlete, but because they are outstanding character. And they happen to be an athlete. And that's sometimes the people we overlook. And hey, just looking for your blessings. And the athletic committee thought it was a wonderful thing.
Since this came through committee, we don't need a second. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is Mr. King. Do you have anything from the Budget Committee?
Nothing new, but there will be some.
Obviously. Yeah. Okay. Building and Grounds, Mr. Safety.
We have one item on our agenda, and that is the approval for Stone Memorial High School's play clock installation. The materials and the labor will all come from booster clubs or through the athletic department's fund. So I need a approval. Well, I guess we approved it in our committee, so.
Right, so we don't need a second. We just need to vote on it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next is Ms. Hamby, the Safety Committee.
I just want to report that we had a safety committee meeting. It went great. We had Mr. Patton, we had Mr. Klaus, and we had, they spoke with us on some scenarios of cases that had happened in the state of Tennessee, gave us some laws to do with bullying, and gave us some great advice. We also had Randall Hopkins from the Bikers Against Bullies here. He did great, and we're going to be working with him and hopefully putting, they're called buddy benches at each of our schools. And he, his motto, stand up and stand out, stand up for your kids. And I agree with the things that he said, and he gave us some great insight also. And so, I mean, all in all, it was a great meeting. Bullying is going to be around forever, but we can put a stop to most of it, and we can probably get a lot of it under control if we just work together. And we've chosen that we're going to work together with different entities, and so it was great.
Thank you, Ms. Hamby. I was there. It was a great meeting. All right, next is the Chief Financial Officer's report. Ms. Harris is not with us tonight. She has a sick child at home, so I know she would like to be here, but Ms. Bray is going to substitute for her.
Obviously, I'm not Casey Harris. She just wanted me to share with you, the sales tax report has not dropped, so we don't have those numbers. Revenues for July were $522,031. And then the expenditures were $2,224,000. She said if you had any questions, please give her a call, email her.
I want to ask you.
Okay.
No, I'm just
Go for it.
I'm just teasing.
Thank you. Ms. Bray, I almost called you Ms. Harris.
Oh, she had really aged then.
Okay. Next item is the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Now, we're approving the consent agenda minus items 17, B, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I just wanted to remind everybody. Okay. Mr. King with the first, and Mr. Brock with the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, it passes. All right, now, run out of paper. All right, now we'll go to item 17B1. Mr. Safety, do you want to do all three of them together, or do you want to do them separate?
Yeah, I think I won't mind doing that at all. I have some general questions I wanted to discuss. Of course, it has to do with social distancing. It has to do with protection of our students at these events. And as stated, there is none of the faculty included any component saying they are aware of the COVID response of the COVID, the possibilities of COVID being spread at those events. I just wanted to take a separate vote on all three, and that's my issue.
Okay, I agree with you. I don't think any of these three had anything on there about COVID. I do remember reading some on the CTE. They had mentioned that pending, the COVID numbers being okay. So are you saying that you want to approve these pending the COVID numbers being all right?
I want to approve these pending each faculty member including a statement of COVID awareness. That's all.
I'll second that.
Statement of COVID awareness.
Statement of COVID awareness.
I mean, we've got to do something as a board to make sure that our faculty understand that these events are wonderful for students, but we're also taking an opportunity at those events to expose them at critical times. So.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve the overnight stays pending each faculty member come up with a statement of COVID awareness. And I don't think our teachers would take the kids if the numbers were really high, but I agree with you. We need to have something in here telling them that we want them to be very careful.
Yes.
So, all right, so we've got Mr. Safety made the motion, Ms. Carter, you second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those pass.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Is COVID awareness, is it a statement? Is it a...
Well, I'm going to leave that up to the director of schools to work with those faculty members to come up with what she thinks is an appropriate statement. I'm not going to micromanage this. I just need to know that they've included it.
I believe what you're wanting is knowing that you want them to prove to us that basically that it's okay by the COVID numbers in order that it would be safe for our children to be going.
I'm going to let the director of schools determine that.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. That's passed. All right.
Whoa, when am I passed?
Yeah, you're on a roll, Robbie. Okay. Everything else is passed. All right, the next item on the agenda is old business.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. King.
we've talked about Executive Order 84 all night.
Yes.
I'd like to enter it into the minutes.
Okay.
Impressive.
Okay. And I want to say something too during old business that I had a board member to ask me about putting a mask mandate on the agenda, and I did not feel that we needed a mask mandate on the agenda because I personally feel that if this board wants to discuss a mask mandate, then we need to do a special call meeting, and we need to invite people that's pro and people that's anti, and come in and have a civil discussion, and then make a decision if that's what this board wants to do. I do not want to do that. Okay. I think that our policy that we've got in place right now, it allows children to wear masks that want to wear a mask, and it allows teachers to be able to wear masks if they so choose, or face coverings of any kind, just like we did last year. So I would personally not be in favor of doing that, but if that's what this board wants to do, we'll do it, okay? Anyway, that is why there was no mask mandate on the agenda tonight. I chose not to put it on there because I knew and I know the person that asked me to put it on there just wanted to have a discussion. And I was afraid that if we put it on the agenda, that it would not be a discussion. And that's why I feel like that if we as a board want to have that discussion, we need to do it in a special call session and let everybody come in and speak their piece. But I'll leave it at that. So if you guys want to discuss that, you need to let me know, and I'll call a special call meeting, okay? Otherwise, just leave it laying.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Questions from the media?
Oh, yeah, we still got questions from the media, sorry. Got any questions? Now. Motion to adjourn. Second, okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Hallelujah, thank you. And all you people